I call upon everyone here because we are going to perform a seance to consult the spirit of the Powered by the Apocalypse engine. Powered by the Apocalypse engine, where did Vincent Baker touch you on the night of your creation? That bad, huh? Sheesh. Uh, hey there, everyone, and welcome to Lore Ramblings because we're actually covering something interesting. We are covering one of the only splats that actually involves something that you don't really expect when you're covering the Chronicles of Darkness. Second Sight, which is a 1E splat that introduced the ability of having psychic powers and hedge magic to the setting. Name's Adam.
I'm Tech Priest.
I'm Imsit, and we'll be talking about the section called Lifting the Veil, which is about the era of spiritualism that pervaded the US and the UK in the late 1800s.
Ranging from the Great Disappointment to "That's right, all you are a bunch of Khazarites" to Ahmadiyya, which is the beginning of an Islamic Renaissance in a way. Ahmadiyya being a millenarian movement that occurred in the late 1880s. Oh, and Christian Science, and I think the Salvation Army. A
Yep.
lot of new religious movements came out during this
It's
time.
it's a very interesting time, contrasting with, you'd say, the earlier part of the century where we had the Great Awakening, we got the various, what was it? Yeah, I think Presbyterian, Mormonism, all these sorts of uh, Christian religious movements.
Seventh-day Adventists and the Jehovah's Witnesses came from that period as well. Not the later period, the previous period, as well as Methodism, if I recall. So with that, let's open up with some pretty fun art. We have an old lady screaming as a guy is holding her hand. This date has not gone well, I don't think. In reality, this is a seance. Legitimately, the story for this, since I did a really quick skimming, this guy was just trying to figure out if his sister got murdered, and his sister's ghost possessed her to say, "Yes, I was, bitch!"
I was murdered, bitch.
So, lifting the veil covers. I think this is kind of limiting, just a little bit. It only covers 5 years.
5 year, even
Mind
though
you,
the
this is the 5-year spat that really kind of defines the Spiritist movement.
True. And this is also during a rapid series of technological improvements as well. So this is fine. And hello there as well, Private Penguin. We are talking about lifting the veil, which
as
you
well
know
as well
things are
as
going. Oh, sorry.
so I think not Nito's here as well.
Yep. I'm just saying that you know things are going to go well when a Helena Blavatsky quote gets used.
If coming events are said to be cast their shadow before, past events cannot fail to leave their impress behind them. What
If
does
you're
that
not
mean?
sure about Helena Blavatsky, a lot of her teachings was later on used by a certain demented chicken farmer.
Listen,
Oh
I will
no.
not hear slander against Blavatsky.
It
Blavatsky
is
is one
not
of the
her
most
fault.
interesting, yeah, she's one of the most interesting writers and spiritualists of this period. And a lot of her stuff has basically become like this almost canon for these people. It's really interesting.
I mean, I would say the era is sort of canon to our understanding of spirits in itself.
A
In
lot
fact,
of
like,
your modern conspiracy theories came about from this,
yeah,
yes.
if just our simple understanding of like what is a psychic, what are mediums, what is hypnotism, because hypnotism comes out of this.
Not really.
Phrases
Mesmerism
like
is older than that, but
it's
it
connected
becomes
to it,
popularized during this time.
and institutions which still exist today, like the Society of Psychical Research, it is still existing today. There are still people that dedicate themselves to try to explain the paranormal, because that's what this kind of is.
It's not just that, but also, as mentioned, a lot of religious movements and spiritualism as a concept. Yeah. In fact, actually, during this time period, I mentioned it, Ahmadiyya, which is Ahmadiyya. I'm pronouncing it wrong, which is a variant of Islam that's particularly popular in the southeast of Asia, if I recall. It's also one of the more recent and larger growing branches, came about during this time. In fact, actually, the founder of this school of Islam is still alive. just to give an idea. And this is also during a period where connections with Hindu mystics became a thing. In high society, they would bring gurus over, specifically because of that fascination with the Orient.
Yeah. The other thing is how this actually connects with ongoing social movements. Like to bring up the fact, when we think of a medium, we think of a woman. Like that is the interpretation of what a medium is. And that's popularized in this era, even as more sort of gender norms, particularly Victorian ones, are setting in.
Well, the
And you, in fact,
Victorian ones
actually,
were long established. We're actually dealing with, because this is about near the end of the Victorian age, we're actually beginning to see some serious social movements, including the suffragette movement. It is
yeah,
just
funny enough,
starting around, and I don't think it's become legal in the territory of Wyoming yet, but there were considerations due to their low population to allow women the right to vote. They had the ability to hold property at this point. This is just the beginnings of a natural movement towards this.
also, yes, Penguin, you talk about theosophy. That is also from this era.
It is also responsible for some of the craziest shit you've ever heard of. If you've ever heard of Vril or Thule, you can thank this.
Now, Thul's older than that.
It is, but it
Vril,
was
I think, is
repopularized.
from a different book as well, but
It's near the
no,
time. It's near the period.
Blavatsky's most famous thing, I would argue, is her her talk about the lost continent of Mu and Lemuria and all that. It's as well as sort of like the idea that there's this separate group of races, including the Aryans, which is what she assigns to one of the names to one of them, which, it's all wild, kooky bullshit, but it's fun, wild, kooky bullshit,
And
and it's
that's
worth a
another
read.
thing that people. That's another thing you're bringing up. This is also coming to terms with archaeology and paleontology, because both of them have started to mature at this point, or at the very least came out of their childhood. Like, archaeology was really new at this point. Troy was only discovered, I think, around this time. Might have been a bit earlier, but the concept of digging
Yeah.
and looking through ruins is still kind of new at this point. And it's also very societally racist at this point, since you
Like
had to be
they,
rich,
yeah,
wealthy, and you were likely European doing this.
like they do actually bring this up in a little section
Oh,
talking about,
I'm gonna criticize that, because they forget that this is also the period where the Black Israelites and Moorish Brotherhood came about, because they were trying to connect to their roots, and it led to them claiming that they were Jewish or Muslim,
Because
yes,
like Nation of
obviously
Islam.
there's the comment about Ham, and thus that has to be the lost brother, so on and so forth.
If you're
but there
wondering
is,
where all Jews are actually just Khazars LARPing, it comes from this time period too.
but they do bring up that like the secret doctrine set down the whole 7 root races of humanity.
Which is based on
The
hyperdiffusion. Basically, the idea is, where did all these things come from? We found lemurs in South America and Africa. We
It was
found
India and in Africa.
India and Africa. Thank you.
Yes, they found lemur fossils in both places,
All of these
and
places
someone's
built
trying to figure out
pyramids.
why the hell that this happened.
Also, why do everyone build pyramids?
Because pyramids are an easy shape to build, but people
Dumb
don't like
people
that
don't
sort of
know
answer.
that. Yeah, it's too simple.
That's the point, because it's a simple shape. It is the most simple construction you can imagine. You put one rock on top of another.
but at the same time as they're doing this exploration and there's talks of mediums and psychics, there is there are groups there that are trying to suss things out for fraud, and even the Society for Psychical Research actually does support trying to legitimize them by rooting out fraudsters, which I just find interesting because we think like people were wowed at the time and thought everything was, you know, true what they saw from like these
Oh
psychics.
no, there were critics of all sorts.
Yeah,
Again, hypnosis is older than this. It became repopularized during this time. But the concept of mesmerism, this is during the period where they proved that you have to be willing to be hypnotized for it to work. You have to actually kind of believe it to make it work. There were skeptics during this, and this is actually why parascience never evolved outside of parascience, because that's another thing that was founded during this time period.
though
The
I find
Society for what was it? The
Psychical research.
psychical research. Thank you, because I was about to say psychic research, and I was like, that's not right. In any case, the SPR is probably the oldest serious organization dedicated to just looking into spooky shit. And this doesn't just apply to like, oh, the ghost poltergeist aliens. It applies to a bunch of other shit too. They've looked into a ton of things, and they also publish a research paper, which is fascinating.
It still is around, which I think
Yes,
is
still around, which is the
most
thing I
fascinating.
find very impressive. But yeah, they did all sorts of things. They
Because
they even tried to prove the concept of demons and stuff too. Like we're talking like actual faith shit. They did that as well.
because
They
you're
also did.
intersecting faith with sort of the scientific experimentation.
I think they were
Can
the
we
ones that
actually?
also funded the research because there was a guy who tried to figure out whether or not there was a soul by weighing the mass of a person. I think they funded that one. The basically when a person gives their final death rattles, their lungs essentially completely empty, and they consistently would lose somewhere between I think it was like 18 to 21 grams.
Is
Yeah,
that how much a soul is?
That is the
that's
weight
the
of a human
interpretation.
soul.
Yeah.
Yes.
In
Hmm.
reality, it's effectively the air being expelled from the lungs and the force downward from it.
But that's what the
Also, the
psychical
start of
research
decomposition.
brethren would fund.
But but
There's
this mainly starts in what's called the burned over districts. Like they bring up initially the story of um, these sisters in Hydesville, New York. Um, Back in
the Fox sisters.
1848, their home was filled with strange knocking sounds that no one could explain. Kate said the noises were from their friend Mr. Splitfoot, and they could apparently ask Splitfoot questions, and he would respond with a certain number of knocks.
Which is something that if you've ever played around with a Ouija board, or if you've ever seen talking to ghosts in the classical sense, this is something you sometimes occasionally would hear or see in those mediums.
Basically, one of the things that's associated with ghosts and hauntings is often knocking noises with poltergeists. You might think, oh, that seems like a decent way of telling what's going on here. In reality, no, it's not. It's complete bullshit. But the big thing is that it's very easy to fake making noises, and we have this stuff even happening today with like the Conjuring House and things like that, where it's relatively easy to learn how to pop a joint to make noise, especially your ankles.
Yep, because all you have to do if you're curious is you tilt it downward and towards the other side of your body. You can't do it you have to learn how to do that reliably.
Yes, but it can become very difficult to notice because, well, it's your feet. Most people aren't looking at your feet.
It's
And
sleight of hand. You have to make sure that their eyes stay off of that. It's also easier if you have a partner or compadre who can make the noises and no one knows about them.
And so,
exactly.
with this, the word got out about this, and people actually came to the house, or at least w- met with the sisters to have this thing answer their questions.
By the way, if you're wondering why this worked out relatively well, since this took place in New York, so the Mid Atlantic and New England had a very interesting religious tradition. In fact, actually, it's to the point where you can kind of see some of that weirdness in Lovecraft's work because it never fully went away. But this is the kind of weird spiritual cooking stuff that you'd see that would eventually inspire, well, a young Smith to become the founder of the Church of Latter-day Saints. That's kind of the melange and milieu of what's going on. Because you had a lot of folk traditions that you'd find around Europe in this area, and it just kind of would blend together.
But eventually, the due to money, they eventually would sort of these sisters would break apart. Um, Although, funny enough, one of them, Leia, managed to avoid the worst of the effects and live our life in comfort, perhaps being immune to whatever the spirits were trying to do to her.
In reality, she just wasn't really in on this scam.
No,
But she was.
They were in on. They were both in on
They
the
were all
scam.
in. She was in charge of it, but
Ah,
who knows?
The backblast though was not as severe for her, mostly because I think she decided to back out of it once it was pretty obvious and just.
And also condemn it.
fair enough. Yeah, that's I think what actually happened. I'm a little less familiar with this sort of stuff. I just kind of know the general tones, but this is kind of really fun.
So you have this mixing also with the fact that New York just has this religious had this religious revival movement at the time. They bring up, the fact the Shakers, the Millerites, Latter-day Saints came from the region.
Well, they
Um,
didn't come from the region, but their founders definitely did.
yeah,
Also,
and they
there's something else you're forgetting. This is during the period of the Great Disappointment, which was actually the founding society of both the Branch Davidians and the Seventh Day Adventists and Jehovah's Witnesses. Actually, they all came from that same movement. There's also religious reforms because New York is closer, at least in some ways, not necessarily culturally, but in terms of trade links, to the United Kingdom. And the United Kingdom was going through a lot of the same things. So there was an interspersing of ideas across the trade lanes in the Atlantic, especially since you had tramp steamers and ocean liners that would kind of bring communications between the two. Large shipping would go between them, especially in Canada as well. In fact, actually, the
and
spiritualist movement you could also see kind of like in that same Toronto sort of corridor.
and that's also something that seems interesting. It feels like this is one of the first sort of global movements. Because we're saying, like, we're seeing all across the world these sorts of religious revivals or
That's where
interest
reform.
in
I think that's
spiritualism.
this is where Judaism got its I think its original Orthodox kind of like separation, and Zionism became popular during this time.
Well, the latter has to do with nationalism more so than
True, but
any
it's
religious
also due to
revival.
some doctrine reforms, like the decision to bring back Hebrew as a constructed language.
That too.
I've
Um,
mentioned in Islam, the Ahmadiyya. There was also big reforms in Hinduism, especially since it became in contact with the West due to the East India Company. There is also similar reforms that you see in East Asia. A lot of new religious movements in China, and I'm not talking about the Taiping specifically. There are other folk religions that came about through this period, like Yiguandao. It just was a global phenomenon, essentially.
but even as this phenomenon is going on, they have obviously the skeptics, and we had scientific groups actually trying to explore it, trying to either, explain things or discredit them.
Like,
And there
this
was
is where
also
you're.
religious folks,
Like as they're
particularly Puritans and Calvinists in general. They weren't a fan of this folk crap.
devil worship.
It was either devilry. They would either see it as devilry or charlatanry, which is fit for them going to hell.
But
Some of
you
the
have,
greatest critics were actually priests.
but you do have here the Christian Science Monitor actually trying to have empirical evidence of the existence of spirits, which how do you explain something that you can't have physical evidence for,
Yep. And
especially
also,
at this
yes,
time?
Christian Science was a thing. This is actually where the movement came from. And hey, there's the Society for Psychical Research right there.
The Theosophical Society and the Null Mysterious, which is not real. That's from uh, Hunter the Vigil.
It is from Hunter the
Yep.
Vigil, but it is just, they're just insert. This is actually kind of
It makes
interesting.
sense for them
It,
to have started off around this time.
it does, but it is also interesting because this is not, I don't think this is the first splat to do this, but this is the first to kind of incorporate their setting right when they're explaining how this stuff worked.
Which is a bit odd because I did actually look up. Hold on, is this real or not? And it's sometimes a bit hard to differentiate.
This is, I think, a detriment to just because I think the other Dark Eras did a great job in setting up everything. This one's more along the lines of we're going to incorporate our stuff into real history, which I think is not as good. This does
Yeah,
downgrade this one a bit.
Yeah.
I still think that this is a good way to do it for this topic in specific.
True, especially since Second Sight is not a very popular splat. It's just not brought up that often.
It's a blue book that is very rarely used for pretty blatant reasons. It's every non-mage magical stuff. So you get your psychics, you get your mediums, you get your variety of, insert weird religious slash magical tradition here. That's sort of what it's meant for.
Which is neat, but the thing is, if you're doing that, you're probably just going to want to play a mage anyway. Or a
Right, but this
hunter.
is for people who don't want to play mage but want to be able to do that, or for hunters that want extra like stuff to use, or mortals that want more of a magical spice, or GMs that want to be able to throw like superpowered mortals at people. It's great for that. It's not so great for anything else. And it never got a second edition book, which I mean, Armory got one. This didn't, but Armory sort of needed one because of the difference between like the systems and all that. But even then, Armory's second edition is arguably worse than the first.
But
Anyway,
the next thing to bring up, and we talked about this earlier, but the intersection that this has with the suffragette movement, with just women in general.
Because again, at this point in time, for the most part, women did have quite a few rights. Rights were expanded during this time. Funnily enough, a lot of the weird rules if you've ever gotten weird laws that you'd see across the states, occasionally they'll mention stuff like women can't change their hair without their husband's permission or something dumb like that. No, it's treated as an element of their property. The only state that actually has it as a common law is Vermont, by the way. Because there was one case where the judge ruled in favor of the husband, saying that his wife has bad dentures and he has the right to ask her to take them out of her mouth. So in the state of Vermont, it is common law to allow a husband to demand that their wife take their dentures out of their mouth. But that's the only state, and that's because it happened once. That means there's precedent. It would get thrown out otherwise. But in most other
and even
states,
then, it would still probably get thrown out now because it's like this is obviously way too crazy of a
well,
of a
it's
case.
not a
It's like
law. It was never written down as a law. It was a ruling, which makes it common law.
right. Right, which is also where we get into the fun bits of like you can't have an alligator on a leash in certain areas of North Carolina. I
Technically, there used to be city ordinances
banning
that
pinball,
disallowed
yes.
elephants to plow fields because there was a circus that ran havoc in cotton fields doing this as a promotional stunt. I'm not even kidding. I think it was P.T. Barnum. They would have elephants just till the fields as a promotional stunt because they would have the banners for their circus on the elephants' bodies as moving canvas. But because they did damage by trampling the crops, several cities banned this from happening.
I do have to bring up something Per Penguin said, which was, if they were weighing the souls of people, did they weigh them against gingers?
The control group.
That's the control group.
That was not a stereotype at the time, so no.
Yeah, you know how we have an object that is actually 1 kilogram, and that's what we measure against. We got to do that with souls.
Oh,
But
A
there
kilogram is
is.
actually defined as a metric meter of water, something like that.
hmm,
There's
but
like an actual definition using water for the weight nowadays, though there is still the
hmm,
original kilogram.
yeah, but
Also,
what?
there's called Third Eye. It's a 2E mechanical overhaul of Second Sight. I did link in the description Second Sight's first edition blue book because I do think it's an interesting splat. And at the very least, it's not a bad idea to, if you're doing a Mortals game or a Hunters compact, this might be something they uncovered during their expeditions in dealing with the supernatural.
If you
It's
want
a
to play
great
as
way to
mage without the mage,
it's a great way to run weaker level antagonists for Hunter that aren't full on witches. I mean, there's also, of course, the book Witch Finders or Witch Hunters, I think it is, that does the same thing, but this is a bit of a better way to splat it out without having to go into like the dread powers and all that.
It also allows you to play Vascu without Vascu.
Right.
mm. But
But,
talking
but
about
yeah,
the
back to women's suffrage.
yeah,
Back to
so
suffragettes, which we promise is related to spiritualism.
because we actually do have people like, I think Victoria Woodhull did involve herself in spiritualism at one point,
So
but we'll get to her
they became
later.
celebrities. A lot of these
Yeah,
women mediums and
but the
psychics
the other
became celebrities, and several of them would use their newfound influence to demand the right to vote. or to improve
But
property holding laws.
but the other thing was this: they had their own business essentially.
It allowed them to
It was
run
their own wealth.
businesses, and
It gave them a
traditionally women
voice.
could, but it was expected for them to do it in the custody of their husband. Like if the husband died, they would hold it in retainer.
Like
Traditionally.
I remember my hometown. I remember. I don't know if it's still around, but there was somebody who was like a medium or some sort of like crystal ball reader. Lived on our own property.
Oh yeah, there is a not even 20 minutes from where I live. There is still a person who does professional palm readings and other psychic prognostications. You can still find psychics to this day. Speaking
Yeah.
of which, here's a fun law that was actually written during this time in Pennsylvania. Did you know that it is actually illegal for a medium or a psychic to take payment to get advice to give advice based on their mystical powers? You could not go to a fortune teller to ask where you can find treasure, to talk to your dead relatives if they're a medium. You can't do that if you're paying them. It is illegal for that psychic, medium, or any other of that sort to take payment. And that's because in Pennsylvania, they did so many scams that the state banned it, at least as a paid service.
It's sort of amazing how many of these scams and many of these people were running around at the time. It's one
It's
of those things where people are a little bit out of the loop these days because we don't really have like popular psychics these days. They've kind of died out in the last 20 years because it's been much easier to debunk them. It's
The
been much
last
much
gasp of
easier.
that was, I think, what was it, John Edwards, the dude who would do
John
cold
Edwards,
calls?
yeah, the cold reading stuff. That's sort of the last gasp, and that kind of got its credibility completely torpedoed by, well, James Randi for one thing. The other part of it was that the unedited bits of his show came up, and it became very blatant of what he was doing.
Yeah, because
There
you would see
was
him just bomb after bomb after
after
bomb.
bomb. Yeah, it was impressive, actually.
Like, to give you an idea, he was such a horrible cold reader. It was actually more likely. It was actually you could get a random guy off the streets and have him do cold reading, and he'd be slightly better than John Edwards was. He
And
was
then there
that
well,
was
bad.
also there's also Sylvia Brown, who she had a very high profile failure where she said, "Oh no, this woman's dead. This woman's dead. This woman's dead." She wasn't.
Nope. Also,
though as
don't
The
forget that Peter Popoff started life faking being a person who can talk to the dead. The preacher who could speak to the dead.
and I guess yeah, no, that is the new scam. It's the televangelist
the
with their
televangelist
faith healing.
is one of the greatest scams ever made.
Although people are bringing up the idea of well, crypto and AI essentially being the new scam, and I would say AI is essentially our fortune teller now.
Yeah, it's basically the hey Grok, is this true?
No, hey Grok, can you read my future? Can I tell you about the genocide that is occurring in South Africa today? No, Grok! I don't need you to predict more atrocities in the Cape of Good Hope. Please!
But it also brings up the idea of well, we've always had some form of a fortune teller. The Romans had their sheep
Augers.
guts. Yeah, their
The Romans
augurs.
were incredibly superstitious about fortune telling. Remember, you couldn't go into battle without the sacred chickens predicting victory, or you would get punished. And faking the chickens didn't work either. If you tried to fake the chickens out, bad things happened to you, or so the stories went. And I'm not joking. They had sacred chickens that would come with them on campaign, and if they ate all of the grain, that meant that they were predicted for like a good success in battle. And if they didn't eat the grain, well, that's bad. You shouldn't fight today. So there was somebody's job whose basically it was to pretend not to starve the chickens to starve the chickens in order for the general to be able to get the battle he wanted.
Another fun one that I vaguely remember is, if I remember correctly, I know the very famous one is the Ides of March prediction, where Julius Caesar went and got his fortune essentially told, like the augurs, and they basically said the Ides of March were to be fortuitous. He took it as
Not fortuitous. The thing is that they said this is not a good day for you to be out and about. Don't go out on this day. Beware the Ides.
and he didn't listen.
And famously, he brushed it off as basically like, okay, like that's just there's no way. It's the rest of it is complete hokum. Like you're obviously not a good fortune teller.
And then he gets stabbed by 30
And he got
senators.
stabbed. Yeah, then he
And
got
actually,
stabbed.
what I would realize is
And this is,
Constantine,
yep, Constantine as
literally,
well. Well, he
hit,
validated it as he saw the sign of the cross over the battlefield, and he
and that and
knew.
that and that changed the history of religion in the world.
I mean, this is not just the Romans. The Romans were very much obsessed with prophecies. The Italic peoples in general were. The Greeks also were, to the point where they
You know,
had
The
oracles
Greeks
for a
did.
reason.
Yeah.
And my favorite prediction from the Greeks was, I believe it was the ruler of Pergamon, said,
Oh yeah, the your great empire, etc., etc.
"No, you will be the beginnings of a great. It will be the beginnings of a great empire."
The end of a great empire should you go to war with like this guy,
The
and
Persians,
he
if
went
I
to war with
remember.
the guy, he lost, and of course it's the great empire that ended as his own. So
But speaking of conflict, they bring up that spiritualism was actually very tied in with the Civil War, because it was also
oh
very
yes,
northern, northern starting. You had at least one person, a woman by the name of Nettie Colburn, and this was a real person who was a medium for the president, mainly
yeah,
mainly Mary Todd. But I do want to press this: the president of the United States had a woman who would practice, spiritual divination. If we had that today, I think that would actually end president's career.
Not really.
no, not really. You've got to remember that the astrologer of Nancy Reagan was incredibly influential in the Reagan White House.
It was.
Okay,
Also,
I
keep
was
in
going to say,
mind that one of the most beloved Canadian prime ministers, Mackenzie King, was a complete
Oh my God,
fucking nut bar outside of office. And he
Mackenzie
believed in
King.
so much occult shit. It's not even
Mackenzie
funny.
King Mackenzie King is one of my favorite prime ministers in general, like worldwide, because it's like he was a good prime minister, and then you read up into his backstory and what he was doing in his private life, and it's like, okay, excuse me, what the fuck?
Yeah, let's go through some of
Uh,
them because he is fitting for this.
he is. It's amazing. So first off, Mackenzie King believed that the dead spirit of his dog was talking to him and telling him which bills in Parliament to pass.
Yes.
That's just the surface, man. That's just the surface.
That's like the first thing. He also had a wizard friend.
Yes, he did.
He legitimately had his own version of a court wizard.
I mean, so did Saddam Hussein. So like,
wait,
you
wait, what?
know,
Saddam Hussein had a court
yeah,
wizard?
yeah.
Yes, he
Saddam
did.
Hussein had a court wizard. You didn't know about this?
No, I did not. Is he still alive?
No, but the court wizard was influential in informing him that he should invade Iran.
Oh no.
Yeah. So, like, here's the thing. People claim that believing in this sort of stuff could destroy you now as a modern politician. Not necessarily.
I mean, we would call them today spiritual advisors.
Yeah.
Right. It's not the weirdest shit we've had politicians do.
My favorite was when they found an unclean homeless man who ran a weird sex Christian cult, and he's like, "Stop giving your son aspirin." And
Yeah,
that's how Rasputin became a key spiritual advisor to the Tsar.
because he was entirely correct, though probably not
He was
intentionally.
accidentally correct in saving Alexei's life.
Because aspirin's a blood thinner, and the man was a hemophiliac. So it's like, oh yeah,
So apparently, Nettie Colburn encouraged the president to read the proclamation, the Emancipation Proclamation. In fact, actually, many spiritualists were tied with abolition
Yeah,
movements.
actually,
yes,
that is something that happened because Lincoln himself wasn't sure, and
yes.
I believe he was asked to, not just by the meeting, but essentially through his wife.
Basically, yes. Mary Todd was not exactly. pro-abolition, but she thought it was an important thing to do, if I remember correctly.
She did. She did.
There
She
were
did mainly because
there were a few other like people that were pushing for other reasons other than like, well, we're anti-abolition. One of the ideas was that hopefully you could get a slave uprising going on in the South, which would have basically ended the war.
Also some very fun comments on Mackenzie King communing with his dead dog. Bro, the dog was saving Canada. From Private Penguin.
Apparently he didn't during the Second World War really rely on the spiritualists, but I have to believe that he was holding seances for his dog. Like there's nothing else that I want to believe more.
Also, not Nita. Why would you trust the dog with public office? Because he was a good boy.
Because he was a good boy. It's one of those like fascinating
Also,
things
Squirrel
where you get
Killer
some of these...
points out one other one. It's not just Mackenzie King. Pierre Trudeau actually had spiritual advisors that specifically told him to crack down hard on Quebec.
Oh no!
I do not blame him for that. I think that those spiritualists were right, and that the Quebecois should be glad that they are allowed to even remain within the great nation of Canada.
Especially since their version of independence were like, no, we could still totally use the Canadian dollar, right, guys?
Yeah.
Screw that.
It was like Brexit, but dumber, which is a fucking accomplishment.
That is.
Yeah. It's actually the big reason I didn't crap on Brexit as much as I could have, because I had this as my example.
Yeah. Funny enough, they now bring up what was going on in Canada, and you did have movements, primarily in Nova Scotia.
Well, yeah.
That were focused on spiritualism.
It's because Nova Scotia. Okay, so again, if you've ever looked at ocean line passenger routes, Nova Scotia was one of the main disembarkment point for Europeans that were leaving the old world. Like the White Star Line and Cunard Line actually led off to, I believe it was Nova Scotia is the place with Halifax, isn't it?
Yes.
That's why, because of Halifax. Halifax was one of the main disembarkment points. Same with New York. That's the reason they grew so much. I was just making sure because the maritime provinces kind of blur together in my brain.
Yeah.
The maritime provinces weren't officially Canadian until after the Second World War, so...
Yeah. Then you do bring up...
You're confusing that with Newfoundland.
Oh yeah, that I'm mixing those two up.
The dependency of Newfoundland.
Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, I've mixed those two up. Okay.
Nova Scotia, and then there's New Brunswick that was fucking
New Brunswick.
My brain up. Because there's New Brunswick next to it, and I sometimes swap the two.
There's three ends right next to each other.
Yeah.
Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick.
But yeah, that's the big reason that it would occur so much in Nova Scotia and in the Maritimes. It's just it was a major disembarkment point for, like we're talking. This is the same thing that had Canada Pacific Railway build like the Empress of Britain and Empress of Ireland. Like this was a major shipping route.
They then bring up one of actually the more notorious mediums, Daniel Douglas Hume.
Well, before we talk about D.D. Hume, also fun fact, Nova Scotia is one of the first four provinces to join the Dominion, along with Ontario, Quebec, and New Brunswick. Mm-hmm.
But
and
Hume,
also, it was similar to the Northeast because, again, spiritualism was quite impressive.
Truly, this is the Canadian history podcast now.
I think it's interesting since we do have a decent Canadian audience.
We do. It's kind of crazy.
It does make me think of early Canadian hunter packs.
Also, here's another fun thing they highlight. The opinions in the Maritimes, and this is actually a major thing, because it was tied closer to that spiritualist revival, that ran very harsh counter to the very Catholic Quebec and the very Anglican Ontario. So there was actually a movement by the Maritimes to back the fuck off, and that's why Newfoundland did not want to join initially. Because they didn't feel like they would be represented correctly. According to our own Canadian audience from Squirrel Killer, the Maritime provinces are not real.
They're a figment of the imagination.
It's like Brazil's Acre. It doesn't exist.
No, it's like
Newfoundland
birds.
and
They aren't real.
Labrador, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and Prince Edward Island. They're not real. Too small.
They're not real. They're a psyop by the government, like birds.
You know, the only thing
Early
of value
Canadian
in that area is the Halifax shipyards, let's be fair.
early
Yeah.
Canadian hunters ended up hunting French more often than not.
Uh,
I mean, you think
You're
about it,
not
yeah,
I
wrong.
assumed
it's a
they were
weird,
possessed because they were speaking
yeah,
French.
Quebecois French.
Oh, ugh.
That's actually the big reason. It's not just normal French. When they heard, oh yeah, we got French Canadians, and then they heard them, they knew they were possessed by the Walker and the Winds. They have to be purged.
So this guy Hume uh, was one of the more famous ones because he claimed, and I guess people witnessed this, of him levitating himself rather than a table or a chair.
Oh yeah, this is a classic magician's trick, and he was the one to pioneer it.
Yes.
Because
A lot of magicians' tricks actually can be traced back to the spiritualist movement. Because like lifting a table up on its own, the lifting things around strange objects, the wonderful world of ectoplasm. All of these are basically stage magician tricks, and they're wonderful.
and this guy actually had people come to his place in UK. Or they're Scottish, but still had people coming from all around. And even went to Russia and the United States. It was very popular. This next part where they talk about him having a powerful spirit called the Psalm, I think is fake.
Somne, because
Some,
it's supposed to be based on like the Greek word, which what is the Greek word for sleep? Soma.
I think so.
yes.
Yeah,
That I think
this
is
part's
not
made. This part's made
that.
up, but he did talk about some very potent spirits that he was in communion with.
Yes. The next one though, Victoria Woodhull, pretty actually famous and impactful. So she tried to do seances first, but they were exposed to hoax. But she kept going at it, or at least trying to connect herself to the spiritualist movement. She also had a sister who started up a brokerage, a stock brokerage in New York. I think one of the first female-owned. And according to this, they actually used mediums to help with this.
I mean, it's about as good of a job for the stock market as anything can get. There's a guy that uses a goldfish. He just lets a goldfish swim in front of stocks, and whenever it stays on one for longer than like a second in front of it, he'll pick that one. And he
They
has beat the market.
Well,
they
yeah,
had
that's the
a
thing. Random garbage sometimes is better than the people you hire for this.
Right, because
There's
it's all
also an octopus that's much better than your average stockbroker.
it's kind of wild.
she had a magazine, Woodhull and Clape's Weekly, which also attracted feminists, and she actually became part of the feminist movement to the point where she was the presidential candidate for the was it the free election or the like free rights party, um, with her vice president being Franklin Douglas.
Yeah, that was a ticket back in
It
the
was
late
the ticket of
1800s.
all times.
It, yeah, bear in mind, I think she was not 35 yet, so she could not run,
Legally run. I think she just did it because she could.
It was a vanity run.
and apparently Franklin Douglas did not know about that. Did
No, he
not
did
know
not.
the president candidate was.
Uh,
She was also pushing for free love, which at the time meant more freely being able to, I guess, divorce or take care of children.
Basically, yeah, she wanted it to be like, look, I don't want to have to deal with the bullshit of being in a committed relationship if I want to get banged. Please, I just need I just want to get fucked, please.
Well,
Uh,
she did have 3 husbands, divorced 2, and 1 died.
yeah,
Yeah,
because that was a big thing, was making divorce simpler.
Yeah.
that was a
She
big part
how
of the feminist movement,
yeah.
and it was also a big part of for a lot of Western states of how they got a lot of population and travel back in the day,
Mhm.
because oftentimes the divorce laws in territories were rather lenient compared to what you'd get back out west, especially when it came to residency requirements. Sorry, back
There's
out
a
east.
reason why in Colorado, I love how I keep bringing up laws that I just randomly picked up. In Colorado, this is a side effect of that. Did you know that you can be common law married if you just spend the night at someone's house? If you express an interest in marrying them, and there's demonstrable proof of this, like a post online, or you have hearsay from friends, and you spend the night there, just one night, you can technically,
It can be counted as a marriage in a court of law, yes.
yes. That's how
Now,
light some of those laws were.
you'd still need to get it certified, but it would count.
Um, Eventually, though, her ability, I guess, to be a she really
Well,
just pissed a lot of people off that she
Well,
eventually
I
had to
mean, she
leave
was
the
she
trying to
had
country.
fuck all their
she had weird opinions, and yeah,
Yeah, like if I remember, I looked up that. So she was anti-abortion,
that
but
was not uncommon.
pro-eugenicist. No, but pro-eugenicist,
pro-eugenicist, yes.
which contrasts with a lot of the other eugenicists, which were fine with abortion. She was fine with sterilization, but not kill the baby, basically.
Which, again, this is the 1800s. It gets weird.
It gets weird like this, but the way I interpret, remember, she did at least have some spiritual beliefs. It likely had to do with the soul aspect.
Could be. But
Also,
then
and yeah,
they
they actually highlight why she pissed so many people off. It wasn't because she was a slag. It was actually because if you told her things she didn't want to hear, it was toxic positivity. She just kind of ignored and left you alone if you told her stuff that she didn't want to hear.
no wonder two husbands divorced her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A
But
lot of
moving
it
on,
is also, it's not necessarily that she was sleeping around. A lot of it is that she was very abrasive in her personality. It isn't just toxic positivity. She was, in fact, known for being a bit of a bitch.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, she was very self-centered, very
Her way or the highway.
self-promoting, and yeah, that sort of personality can easily make people not like you.
Fun fact, this is actually one of the reasons why Lenin was kicked out of the Russian Social Democratic Party.
Yes, Lenin had a big ego, and
Had the same
also was
mindset.
but who had the
also was
last
telling
laugh?
people that, you guys are fucking posers. You're not doing anything. You're just sitting
But
around doing nothing.
but who had the last laugh? Well, not Lenin because he had a stroke.
And he got shot by Fanny Kaplan. That would also take a lot of wind out of your sails.
Yeah.
Yeah. But moving on to the UK,
Which this is one
and
that yeah, the UK is a fount for this stuff because
because
oh boy, high
you
society
All right.
loves its weird
you have
religious
high
rituals.
society combined with connections coming out of the rest of the world,
So
as well as the
let's.
language. The language of you could now connect to Australia, India, Canada, the United
So
States.
first off, let's go into this right off the bat. Britain has always had this interest in the East from the beginning of like the 1700s for various reasons, trade reasons, curiosity. There's the whole great game that was going on in Central Asia at this time, including like trying to sneak into Tibet and all this other stuff. The mystic lands of the Far East was a popular conception at the time and was the subject of many, many, many cheap dime novels, or what do we call them, 10 pence novels, I guess, over there.
Penny
Penny
dreadfuls.
dreadfuls.
Penny dreadfuls that were just being churned out by the thousands.
And cheap
The East India
travelogues were
Company,
very popular.
yes, travelogues were also incredibly popular. It was one of the ways that, the guys that first discovered the Mayan ruins and recorded them and got all that. That's basically how they announced their discovery. It was a pair of Americans, one of which was a sketch artist, who went out to go and look for these supposed ruins that were out in the middle of the jungle. How he did this, by the way, is he got appointed ambassador to the United States of Central America, which was a country that was falling apart at the time, and went on a roundabout adventure till he got to an area where where these ruins supposedly were, where he and the person he'd come with sketched down like all of these ruins. They like created detailed, basically photographic sketches in large scale that they would then display in the United States. And the other big thing with him is he basically said, like, these are not Egyptian. These are very much the opposite of Egyptian. The Egyptians never built this. They were never here. This had to be the native people, which was a controversial topic at the time.
No, it
It's
had to be
mainly
the people from.
because,
It had to be the people from Lemuria.
well, here's the reason why. Essentially, because the concept of continental drift, it's a mixture of not understanding continental drift, but it's also the concept of humans had to have an origin, right?
Yeah, and
But
everybody was
where
looking
was it?
for where that was. That there was a lot of theories about out of Asia. There was a lot of theories about out of Africa, which eventually seems to be the correct hypothesis with various waves of human migration
It was to the
out of the
point where the
continent.
Piltdown Man was made up specifically to try to refute the Africa hypothesis.
They were trying to make it so that Britain would be the source of the human race.
Yeah.
Oh,
Which,
dear God, if that was true.
yes, the Piltdown Man is a fantastic hoax.
The
Because
horror
the
of
best part about it is that while the orangutan skull was fresh, the lower jaw was at least 200 years old,
Mm-hmm.
or it was centuries old. It was
perhaps.
it was actually probably it possibly could have been from like an Iron Age Britain. I cannot remember the exact dating given for it.
I think it was late
Well, how
Iron
bad?
Age.
Well, no. How bad were the teeth?
Well, they're British. What do you think?
It was
So yeah,
British and
then it's a British
2,000
man.
years old, so yeah. Also, the guy who was possibly responsible was the writer for Sherlock Holmes.
Yes,
Wow.
there's a lot of this that was going around at the time. You have this mix of, as this is the reason why the Society for Psychical Research gets founded. There's this attempt to prove the supernatural using modern rational methods.
Which is actually where, if
And
you ever see those weird, I forget the name of it, but it's a special type of light-based photography where it's like, we could show you auras and shit.
yes, that's where this came from, where it's playing with like these phenomena that were vaguely understood at the time. That someone is like, this has to be that, and goes with it because the ghosts in your blood need the cocaine,
Also, this
etc.,
is around the
etc.
time where, since photography was a thing, a pair of kids actually figured out how to essentially do Photoshop and said, "Hey, look, we found fairies, motherfuckers."
Yes,
Yeah,
and
they did.
that got a lot of people.
Yeah, they had. There was some thing going on like after images of photos, and people thought those were
There was after
spirits.
images, but the
After
thing is, they
images
didn't
were
fake
the
it with
result.
after images.
Yeah, after images were the
They
result
just
of.
made cutouts. They just
Yeah.
made cutouts and pinned them up in places, and managed to trick a bunch of people into thinking the fairies were totally not just pictures out of something. It was amazing.
Well,
This
think
also
about it. Now,
They were
reminds.
so
Okay.
no,
blatant.
think about it. Now you had visual proof. You didn't have to rely on testimony. You could literally now show somebody this.
There's also the
Yes,
matter that I was going to also highlight, because they took the concept of after images is due to how the old old photos were handled.
yes.
And this is where
Double
the idea
exposures.
of ghost photos came from.
Yes, ghost photos were incredibly popular during the 1860s to about the early 1900s. It was one of the main tricks of like certain photographers because it was a good way to make a quick bit of income. You just,
You take a
fake it.
photo of some old stiff in an older suit, like you get an old ratty suit, have him take a photo in the same place, or just kind of use it. And then basically, because of how old photographs worked, it was still kind of there when you took the next photo. So you just do it in the house. It's like, oh, look, it's a ghost. When it's actually just a homeless person that they put a suit on and paid like £2, not a quid, paid like a few
No,
shillings to.
the actual way you did it was you would take the a photo and not quite fully develop it, and
That's it.
then take another photo, giving you
That's
double
Oh,
it. I
exposure.
forgot how the technology worked. Yeah. And
so you
they
had
that
that. Yeah, you had seances, spirit talkers, mind readers.
Yep.
In fact,
Mesmerists, as mentioned,
yeah.
very popular hypnotism.
Mesmerists, a lot of
Uh,
etherists as well, which was
hmm.
people that you have to understand that this is around the time when things like painkillers are becoming a popular for use in surgical stuff. However, medical students being medical students, and as we all know, they always like to shove needles into themselves whenever they get the opportunity. They decided that, you know what, we need to try this nitrous oxide or this ether.
They
And
were
so
the
they would get
OG galaxy
high
gas
as,
abusers.
yes, they would get high as fuck at these wild ass parties, uh, which is kind of in contrast to this appearance you often have of like, oh yes, these Victorian people, and it's like, nah, man, they were doing morphine and shit all the time. They
Just,
were
I dare.
getting
just
fucking
imagine.
I
lit.
say, good sir, can I have a rip of that?
No, no.
Oh,
Good
that
sir,
is
I
thine
want your
good
hit
shit.
of from that opium bong that you brought from the Far East.
I'm just envisioning like you see a refined gentleman lift up their petty like their suits left arm, inject themselves with morphine, and then inhale from some essentially nitrous oxide, going
Yeah.
oh, some excellent experiences.
Good sir, that is, as they say on the streets, the shit.
And
No
then when
cap
they're
for
completely
real.
hammered and and goofing on galaxy gas, that's when they get their friend who is like the younger sister of one of them to pretend to talk to ghosts.
Unironically, that might be how they convince so many people. Is they just got them all fucking drunk.
Drunk on morphine, goofed on galaxy
Cocaine, a lot
gas,
of cocaine.
a
An
lot of
absolute fuckload
cocaine,
of cocaine.
horrendous amounts of cocaine.
Like, you have no idea how much cocaine was going around in these time periods. It was insane.
It was to the point where if a kid was like, "I got a toothache, mother," oh,
Cocaine.
don't worry, here, some
We've
cocaine.
got the
Rub it on the gums
cocaine.
there. Which means you look at
Oh
those old
yeah, mix
photos.
cocaine into the mummy powder. Not Nino's right. Just imagine them doing a line of mummy dust and cocaine.
They did that. They did do that.
I just do imagine then. You look at like those old timey photographs. Probably 1 out of 3 people in those photos was on cocaine.
Also,
They were
if it's a fellow,
fucked up.
if it was a fellow, there is at least a 5 to 10% chance that you can also find a photo of them in drag.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's also
Because
a
drag
5 to
shows were
10%
very
chance.
popular there too.
Yeah. There's also this sort of nature of these performances. The whole idea of these psychics was often like it was a performance art.
So
Which
it's like
leads
any
to the
magician.
which
Like
leads
like
to a guy from like Birmingham, a Brummie's like, all right, now I gotta play my role. So he adopts like a really racist Indian stereotype after putting a bit of polish on his face to darken his skin a bit, but not fully.
a- a-
And pretends to
actually
be a
there
guru from the Far East. Yes.
actually there
Uh,
was a guy. There was a guy, an
Uh,
American, who pretended to be Chinese. It's like his mother was Chinese, his father was like Scottish or something like that. And in fact was literally ripping off a guy to the point where his name was pretty much the exact same as this actual Chinese magician.
Oh, that reminds me of it was like an adopted Latino kid. If you've ever heard of him, he's known as the Prince of Lies because he kept impersonating a member of the Saudi royal family. And he got away with it because he legally changed his name to it, and because he was a brown guy during the 70s to 90s, people fucking believed him.
my personal
The
favorite one of
OG
these
scammer.
is this group of either college students or like doctorate guys that managed to get themselves a tour of like one of the Royal Navy's most advanced, newest battleships by basically just pretending to be from, I think, what was it, Formosa?
Yeah,
Like
that
it was.
happened.
Hold on, I need to find the story for this one because it is absolutely wild.
But just to give you an idea on the energy of these settings, it's kind of amazing. And beyond the
You
people of the
then
gift, the UK is also home to a wide range of haunted places where the living can see and sometimes even interact with the dead. Which, yeah, that's true. Like you could, oh God, imagine you could do some really fun settings in the north of England, like or in the southlands or the lowlands of Scotland, where all the reefer raids were.
Oh no, I
Here it
got an
is.
idea.
The Dreadnought hoax, which
Oh.
they were in blackface pretending to be Ethiopians. It was a bunch of college students from Cambridge in 1910.
I'm not surprised.
I
Uh, this is the thing. He'd done a similar one before in 1905.
he
So
did it
this even
twice.
yes, he managed to pull this off twice.
It's the confidence. If you look and act like you belong, people usually won't question you.
Also,
The
given at the
first time
time,
it
they
was
probably didn't know how Ethiopians looked or
no, they had an
acted
idea.
like.
They had
They
an
had an idea.
idea.
The
They knew how to use
funniest
the
bit
shoe
about
shine
this,
enough to not look like
the funniest bit about this is he first pretended to be the Sultan of Zanzibar to go and see the mayor of Cambridge, and this is while he was at Trinity College. This was his second year there. Absolutely hilarious, amazing practical joke. There was a bunch of complaints by the mayor. He tried to get them removed from the college, and it just kind of went absolutely nuts.
Roadhouse.
Basically, Roadhouse. The later scandal, though, is amazing. This is partially because of the tradition among young naval officers, and this continues to this day, of trying to pull practical jokes upon other naval officers when you can get away with it. And this is the way that they got away with it, was literally they pretended to be. I've got a picture, Adam. If you want to bring this up, I'm going to send it to you
All
because
right,
it is one of
I
the
need to show this because this
it
is
is one
so
of the
funny.
fakest things I've ever seen. It is so obvious that they are in blackface.
Oh, good lord.
Okay, so on a scale of 1 to Justin Trudeau, how false does this look?
It gets even better because they didn't know how to.
Actually, they did
basically,
pretty good. I'm going to show this. They did better than I thought they would have.
so what they did is they then would say to make it, because they knew that to sell this they had to act foreign. So whenever they were supposed to be impressed by something, they'd say the words "bunga bunga." I'm not making this up.
You say that, but here's the thing. Originally, Google Translate was so bad with the Somali language that if you wrote the words "ooga booga," it meant something like "to look." So you could do "ooga booga booga shuga," and it would translate it to look at this textbook or something like that.
Or something stupid, yes.
But here's the photo, guys. Let's show this off to everyone. Bonga bonga, show us the great boat, my good sir.
And the best part about this is that they played the wrong they played the wrong anthem.
Of course they did.
There was a bunch of stuff. They used gibberish in Latin and Latin and Greek. And the funniest part about this is the guy they were pulling the prank on was his cousin, who didn't recognize him.
Oh, that's great.
Yes.
Wait, which one's the cousin? Which?
I don't know which one, if they're in that picture or not.
The best part is that's actually not a bad impersonation of East African. It's more like.
I think they got the clothing right.
It's more.
They
No,
did
it's
a very
more
good
Herero.
job.
It's more Herero or Somali, I would say, than Ethiopian traditional. But yeah, I mean,
they got makeup. They got, like, from a distance you probably couldn't tell.
No, like they did
close,
good, especially
like,
since those are fake beards. Those are fake beards,
yes.
and they did great with them.
Yes.
Then again, the British probably didn't want to stain someone's eyes. Like, sir, are you actually white?
Well, no, it's the British. Oh, you're right, the British politeness.
I don't know.
Well, no,
because
that is a thing. The politeness is a big thing.
Just they're able to get away with it because the British don't want to appear that they're saying that their hosts aren't black.
I don't mind.
For their guests.
I don't mind to be rude, but do you think they're actually Ethiopian? I don't know, but I would rather not cause a diplomatic incident. It's just showing them the boats. It's not a big.
Oh,
issue.
By the way, one of them was is a woman in that picture.
Not surprised. Like I said, they did damn good.
Yeah, it's actually rather impressive.
That is fantastic.
It looks as good as the Tropic Thunder one.
Oh my.
Let me tell you, you haven't lived until you were able to impersonate an Ethiopian to get into the United Kingdom.
To get onto the HMS Dreadnought. Yeah, like it's
until you can prove that, you're not a real actor. Got to be 110% all the time.
But going on to perhaps more of
there is one aspect, the class system, which I think,
yes,
if we're talking about the United Kingdom, this is a big thing. Classism, unlike in the U.S., where there's an element of it, but it's usually the haves and have-nots keeping up with the Joneses. In the United Kingdom, and to a lesser degree in Canada, though not as much, because, again, we both broke free of it, there is a class system. The higher-ups, the nouveau rich, the gentry, the esquires, versus the working-class stiffs.
Language, your accent, your look, where you're from, that defined your class. In addition to your job.
Oh yeah, Private Penguin. I wasn't even trying to do my Hercule impression. I was trying to do the actor from Tropic Thunder. It's just that it turns out that when I try to impersonate him, I sound exactly like the world champ. Yeah.
Robert Downing Jr. Is the one who did it. He got a nomination for an Oscar, but that was the year where Heath Ledger played the Joker, so he didn't win it.
I mean,
Otherwise, he probably
did
would have.
amazingly.
It was amazing.
The same type though.
What do you mean?
I think that would actually be.
People?
I think that would be actually the first time in the Academy, in the Oscars, that someone would have won for blackface.
I know. That's
well, they
what
did
the
it
most hilarious thing
respectfully, and
about
they
it
even
was.
made fun of it.
They were making fun of it. They were making fun of like the whole like nature of all that.
He also that's not my favorite line. It's not you've gone full retard. My favorite line is I'm a lead farmer, motherfucker.
That one's pretty great.
But going on to the working class, so you did have your skilled working class that would sometimes go to a medium, as they say here, could
Tradesmen,
help a
a
man.
lot of
Yeah,
tradesmen had enough money. Tradesmen being basically anyone who was in a specific skill. Plumbers would be an example of a tradesman. And since they had the wealth and they had the union backing, and this is another thing, like because of this, they're really tied to the labor movement and early socialist movements.
but they're kind of almost like a grief counselor in a way.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things somebody said about being a psychic. Is being a psychic is like being a psychologist.
You kind of have to be.
A lot of it is knowing what people want to hear and telling them that. It's about sometimes it's like, and a really good psychic is someone that will say, "I can't help you. There's a psychologist I know."
I'm like, I'm sorry, my friend. I cannot use the dead, and I cannot help you. I have a friend that can.
Like the spirits, I have a friend that can. The really good ones are the ones that aren't going to tell you that because they understand what they're doing is for fun, not for, actual life-changing things.
Also, this is where the concept of oh man, I wouldn't be surprised if this is where the concept of a grief clown came from.
Oh no. Do not bring up that cursed being.
Well, no, because that's not the only one. The concept of clowns being used to alleviate grief is not just due to the entity. There
Notice
were
Eloise
others.
Mole.
If you say its name 3 times, it approaches.
It appears in the mirror.
No, you don't peer into a mirror. You just say it 3 times, and you start seeing them out of the corner of your eyes, and you start hearing your dead relatives talk to you. And then
But moving
finally
on,
it approaches.
Yeah, but moving on then to the middle class.
Middle class is the one that really bought into this.
I mean, it was popular among the high society, and what better way to prove you were high society when you could also, visit them. Keep it up, keep up. Prove that you're a bit more affluent than your peers.
And then of course
it's just that they were also the ones that usually would, actually go out and do like the psychical research stuff. Like it was founded by a bunch of middle-aged lawyers and doctors.
Yeah, they had the wealth, and at this point the experience. And basically, if you're a middle-aged lawyer, you're not necessarily the owner of a firm, but you have enough flunkies that they can kind of run the barrister's office, because it wouldn't be lawyers, it'd be a barrister or a lawyer. It depends on what field. But basically, they'd run it while you're off doing and investigating like the ghosts of Glencairn Castle.
Or you own a modest, I don't know, what's something really British? Spotted dick making business. I don't know. And
you own a haberdashery.
A haberdashery, which means that you don't need to be in the office all the time. Which means you've got plenty of free time to go around and tinker with all of your crazy shit in the shed. Which is, we all know, is the great British tradition that has gotten us the most amazing things on the planet.
You have invented robotic pants. And you also have stocks in the local cheese and dairy farm. So you and your pet dog go out to investigate.
I was also about to make the joke about Accuracy International, where the 3 dudes who built a sniper rifle submitted it to British military trials. To their shock and astonishment, it won. So they had to scramble to fake a business, basically, because it was perfunctory checks to be like, we just have to kind of come and see that you're not 3 dudes in a shed. They were just 3 dudes in a shed.
It was just horrifying. Oh God! Imagine you just did it for a larva. Oh wait, you want our gun?
They won. They submitted it basically out of an experiment to see how what they would need to do to get an actual contract for feedback, and it won. And so they suddenly had to go and rent out an entire machine shop. from someone because the inspection was coming, and they were like, if they find out we are just 3 dudes in a shed that might not be able to keep with these orders, we are boned. So what do? They fake it all, and they have the guy come. He talking to him, and he's like, this was sort of just a perfunctory visit because we just needed to make sure, you're not 3 dudes in a shed. Cue awkward laughter, probably from the people who are running all this, because it's like, good lord, if they only knew.
All right. And then I presume they asked for more orders.
Yes,
They did, and
Wait.
that's when it got outed.
it came out, but they were, by that point, they'd gotten enough of the money for the contract from the upfront that they could actually
Start a business.
I mean, this is
yeah,
not the
basically
first time.
actually get things done.
The British war industry has kind of always been like that, where they would just kind of, it was either some lads in a shed or the local railroad industry.
You know what
Yeah.
this makes me the English longbowman was just 3 dudes.
3 dudes in a shed, yeah.
That's actually where the longbow was invented.
What if we
in the
just made a
shed.
bow really long?
By word, what if we just simply take the bow and make it larger?
I hope you 3 peasants are actually craftsmen, because if you're not, well, oh, I'd have to kill you.
By Jove. Anyway,
Also, if you're wondering, the other thing about the middle class is if you're ever curious about the weird travel logs, or honestly Call of Cthulhu, because H.P. Lovecraft was a very big Anglophile, he would often use the middle class and those that were approaching upper wealth as the people in his that figured into his works, because these are the people that would do this stuff.
Though they
Like,
do bring up that the upper
you're not going to be
class
some
also,
fucking potato farmer doing this.
that the upper class also did travel a lot. They bring up this thing called the Grand Tour, which is to
Yes.
literally tour the entirety of the prominent places in Europe, which would take several years.
The general nature of these grand tours was that you were supposed to go usually to Italy and Greece and to see all these classical sites of antiquity, visit like Paris or Prague, Berlin, Vienna, all these important places in Europe. And it was basically what you would do with the lads before you actually got down and got to work. The aristocracy would also have it so that you would go and see the edges of the empire. And this is actually how a lot of British officers got their start in the army, was they would go somewhere on their grand tour, and then they'd be deployed there. Because they've been there before, they know the country by Jeeves. I think that they'll fit in quite well.
I'm just envisioning it's like I'm just envisioning the great white hunter just kind of enjoying the games of Kenya. It's like you're going to be the major of the second battalion of the First King's Riflemen African Division.
The First
Ready
King
to-
Springboks, blah 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 blahs. Yeah,
Ready to go to
that's
South
kind of how
Africa?
it worked. That's kind of how it worked, actually. There's some officers who are more famous than others for this sort of thing happening to them, but it was not uncommon.
Funnily enough, the first Duke Wellington got his start in India.
Yes. Fighting for the East India Company, actually.
He did.
There's a lot of that. There's also a lot of that, where a lot of people would go on these grand tours, and, well, they were going to be working overseas anyway, so...
Might as well.
Yeah.
Also, Not Nito makes an excellent point. The middle class had just enough money to participate in the plot, but not enough to afford to fuck off from it. You're not wrong.
Exactly. It's like the whole like haunted house thing. It's like, why are you moving? And it's like, hey, you ever try to find a fucking realtor in this market?
Though the next
Look,
thing
my great uncle Louis left this house to me, and I'm gonna be frank. I already sold my old house. I gotta just deal with the ghosts. And don't mind the walls. They bleed sometimes. Just ignore it.
The walls bleed sometimes. What is it like what was it? Was it who did that fucking joke where it was like white people versus black people in horror movies? Like, hell no,
that's
bitch,
all
we
of them.
Hell no, bitch, we leaving. We gone. We're not sticking around.
No, I think that was from what was it called?
That's a lot of them.
Scary Movie?
No,
Scary
I'm thinking
Movie
of
did it at one point.
it's a sci-fi one. Starts with an E.
We're leaving. Oh yeah, it's Event Horizon.
Yeah, Event Horizon.
Oh yeah, yeah.
where Lawrence Fishburne sees the fucking like floating shit in the portal to hell and all that shit, and he
Oh
just
no, no. What he
closes the
does
door.
is, so here's what happens. They're trying to get the computer to translate because there's a very badly degraded transmission when the event horizon came back. And it's like
It's showing them going into a debaucherous nightmare.
it shows them going insane and killing each other, and he just stares at that with a completely straight face and just says, "Yeah, we're leaving."
He looks back over his shoulder. Yep, we're leaving.
Which, fair enough. Everyone's dead.
Um, but the next segment is on scientific inquiry, and talking about the Society for Psychical Research actually starts up in the UK. They actually do welcome spiritualists and as well as scientists to again try to understand
So the thing
this
about
phenomenon.
conspiracy theories is it all started as a branch of a science called parascience. The idea being it's not quite necessarily disproven yet, but we have to try to figure out what mechanics are real. The problem was it never was able to be proven real because it likely isn't. Or if it is, we can't demonstrate it. We don't have the tools for it even now.
Well, a lot of it is magnetic fields and various things like that, where it's like it's phenomena we sort of understand, but it can do weird shit to the human brain and how we
Basically,
perceive reality.
the longer it went on, either it turned out to be true and they would become and join the ranks of full science, or it would just get pushed to the side in terms of crankery. Chiropractics, for example, came about from the same time period.
Yeah, like proper like there's two kinds of chiropractors. There's the ones that are like I'm just making so that your spine is back into like the position it should be, and then there's the ones where this has a bunch of health benefits.
So
Totally, guys.
originally, chiropractics, it evolved from a tradition known as bone setting. Essentially, occasionally, what happens is when you pull a muscle or you just kind of you fuck up your posture, your bones hurt because they're putting
Yeah,
pressure on nerves or
because
they're misaligned.
your muscles are pulling on bones slightly wrong. So the idea is you set those bones kind of back into position.
And then what you're supposed to do, and this is what actual chiropractors should recommend, is you then do physical therapy and posture training so it doesn't happen again. Physical
Right.
training
Hmm.
because you've likely damaged your muscle and it needs to be strengthened to hold it in place. And posture because that's where the damage came from. You have to constantly move because you can't just bend over and cause yourself to have kyphosis, and you can't just bend backwards and have lordosis. You have to kind of keep it all bendy. And then you got the original version, which believed that you could use magnetic force. I'm not even kidding. You have magnet hands to move the vital energy and spirit within inside a person.
Yes,
And it can
which
do
I mean,
things like
happens
cure
to be
deafness.
by snapping which by manipulating the spine will maneuver the vital energy in the body to cure a bunch of diseases.
This is the original take on chiropractics, and this is why it was started as a quackery. The more legit ones go, no, I'm just here to alleviate pain, and you're supposed to do
Yeah,
like
this
physical
is just to
therapy.
help. This is just to help you feel better, as in like physically relieve some of the pressure on your uh,
Also, for the
muscles
love
and
of God,
bones.
do not ever go to the ones that have what's called the ring dinger, where they put a towel around your neck like they're going to execute you in a fucking hostage video and just yank. Because that's what
That
I would
would
causes
happen
I,
to me.
I would
internal
say yeah,
decapitations.
I would say, and if you go to anyone on YouTube that suspiciously has a lot of attractive looking women, probably not the one you should go to.
Probably not.
Probably not. In any case, the upper class, of course, leads to the scientific inquiry and all this that's happening. You get a lot of just weird ass attempts to try to figure this shit out. You have the random ass theories, which is the well,
Like ether.
ether, whatever. And there's a bunch that are like, okay, are any of these people actually psychic or actually doing anything?
Which leads
And
to
this is
the famous card experiment, which is the one that they always use to try to prove it because, weirdly enough, it's higher than random chance, but it's lower than certainty. It's like the card selection you're supposed to have if it's completely random is pretty damn close to like 20 to 25% depending on the card loadout, right?
right.
It's usually over 30%, or like 30 to 35%. Like it's over what it
That's what's
should
weird
be
about it.
consistently.
Yeah, and we're not sure if this is the mathematics not working out, if this is observer bias, a bunch of other things.
But we've done this
There's
repeatedly, and
we've
it's
done
just
this
weird.
repeatedly, and it's like it's just weird. It's just one of those weird ass things.
Which has led to the weird hypothesis that psychic powers are actually mirror neurons triggering. Because
Hmm.
that
Right,
allows you to activate using every little part of your, like, your brain notices all of this weird stuff. This is your brain noticing tells on the viewer, like on
right,
the
Hmm.
card guy. Or it
right.
could be
Which
what's
is
called quantum because they did this electronically too, where you
yeah,
have
and it
this
still
weird
happens.
quantum bias, which may be
See,
just
Yeah,
magnetic resonance in your brain.
see,
like there's so much
hold on,
bullshit that could be involved in this. It's kind of nuts.
you're telling me that we may have accidentally encountered some quantum phenomenon 100 years ago.
Yes.
Possibly. And that's the weird thing. Psychic powers are pretty much disproven at this point, but it might not be completely bullshit because of how our brains work magnetically.
Right, because remember, your brain is this big organ that uses magneticism and electricity to do things, right?
It uses basically the potential of salts to generate electrical charges throughout to relay signals
Yeah.
and chemical
So
signaling in general.
if those signals, we know the Earth has a magnetic field. We know reality seems to have some sort of magnetic field, like the strong force, et cetera, et cetera. So
And we know that
is it
quantum entanglement, the quantum mechanics is so sensitive that any amount of observation can cause things to change
right?
because of the
So are we
energy.
looking at a right? Are we looking at a weird psionic interchange where it's like you're this not really being psychic, it's that somebody has the right entanglement on you at the time,
Or
which
alternatively,
could
is it a
also
case of
explain
your brain's magnetic field activating based on signaling, and by that signaling, you interfere with something very slightly,
right.
which it causes the
And
result to change?
right, and that's actually one of the more interesting hypotheses on the card experiment, where it's like it's literally the I think therefore I am actually changing reality slightly, which is
Or,
basically the whole Crowley thing, which is kind of nuts.
I think in the mechanical case, it's more mirror neurons allow you to slightly and subtly detect tells, but with the electronic version, that might be the case.
We don't know, and there's not going to be a lot of research done on it because, quite frankly, it's a dead end sort of
It's a
for
dead
anything.
end, and most of the time when you deal with parascience, this is the one they constantly gurgle and repeat endlessly. It's the same as flat earthers using that one experiment where they did the poles wrong.
Yeah,
Like, holy shit, stop.
but then we have
there's
here. I was just going to move on to the sort of the next section where they sort of have ideas of sort of chronicles where you could put stuff in.
So one of them is the Civil War. Because,
More
yes,
particularly, yeah, that and also Reconstruction era, because you did have theosophical movements that were trying to get into the South, but they didn't trust these people. Um,
well, they
the
also had
SP,
their own traditions, like, and
yeah,
folklore. Like, there's a big
the
cultural difference.
the SPR though had a better time, to the point where they had branches popping up all across the South.
That's because they actually listened to and talked to the local folklore. That was another thing. A lot of those spiritualists, they had their own mindset because, again, you're kind of coming at this from a theological point of view, and you're coming down there to tell them what to do. And on top of that, the people down there are a type of Anabaptists called Southern Baptists. Baptism is very popular as a religious faith, and it has a little bit more in common with stuff like Calvinism than you'd think. So they're kind of skeptical of this weird hibbity jibbity that could be the devil's work.
But when you ask them about your local hibbity jibbity, they're more than happy to tell you about it.
Because they have their own hibbity. And that's the other thing. You're basically telling them their hibbity's bullshit.
You have the Golden Jubilee, marking Queen Victoria's 50th year of rule. This is 1886 over a 2 day period. So you definitely can have a lot of different weird phenomenon or sort of psychic shenanigans,
Not Nito has an interesting
testing new.
question. How many magnets do I need near my skull to get high? Um, it's not going to get you high, but what it could do is probably give you something akin to a schizophrenic break.
yes, this is where all right, little tangent here. This is this there's this thing called the God helmet. The God helmet is to sum it up in the most like polite terms, the God helmet is effectively this way to manipulate electric fields in your brain, which can cause certain reactions. We've done this before with a few other things, but like that's one of the main ones of like how weird it can get.
It can make you hallucinate. It could also just make you just go unconscious and turn off.
Yeah, like it can give actual hallucinations. It can make you kind of spaz out a little bit, like lose control of certain functions. Can't motor wise, not like muscle wise, more like you just can't move things in this quite the same way.
If we want to tie this into like Chronicles of Darkness, you somehow are tapping into the God machine, perhaps.
Possibly, there's a lot that you can go with that. This is one of the fun things about this is that it's actually been shown as like one of those what is the goddamn term? It's you can actually have basically a religious experience using this helmet. That's why it's called the God helmet, because it triggers the same parts of the brain that activate during like intense prayer.
So you can legitimately have them scream in horror and rapturistic joy at finally seeing their deity.
Yes. Though probably not that dramatic, but it can inspire like the same sort of
I mean,
feelings.
it can if you ramp it up high enough.
Yeah, it can create emotional, like, actual reactions. It's kind of insane. The
But you
Golden
have
Jubilee, though, the Golden
yeah,
Jubilee is very much this absolute massive celebration, which, of course, remember, Victoria was always grieving Prince Albert. She was doing like everything to try to get into psychics and all these other things. It's kind of nuts.
Yeah, it's one of the weird situations where her agreeing to marry Albert was one of the, in her opinion, it's one of the best decisions she ever made because yeah, they got
Albert was
along
a
like a house on
genuinely
fire.
yes. No, they got along incredibly well.
That's what I mean, like a house on fire in the good way.
No, like a house on fire is a negative thing.
No, it isn't. It can be either or.
I've only heard it as a negative.
Nope.
Yeah, I don't know how you would say a positive thing is a house being on fire. You tend to want those two things to be
It's
separate.
because of how close. It's because of how quick they get together. Like that's kind of what I meant.
I get it, but
Okay.
still, yeah, they talk about here how she has the attention of the SPR group. Not the attention of the Theosophical though, because they said that this was a bad idea.
I like how Canada
Yes.
is the one to provide this.
Yeah, Canada provides a lot of scientists. The Toronto group built a box that they felt could force manifestations. And that's just Schrodinger's cat.
Yeah.
So Private Penguin is now asking where he can get a God helmet. They're restricted for a reason.
It's no, you can get one of them. I
You
think
can
it's
get
just
one,
they're
but they're
not cheap.
expensive. They're very
And
expensive.
the one that you're probably going to get is like a jury rigged together contraption using a bicycle helmet.
Oh
And
no,
it
wait,
also
no.
may
Well,
have
no, that
Chinese batteries to power it, which
yeah.
cause it to catch fire.
No,
Yeah.
I got that's a genius character. I tried to find God by putting on the God helmet, and I realized, wait a minute, I am God.
That could be a very fun Sons of Aether mage.
Yeah.
Like they
Ne-
awakened
yeah.
because they tried the God helmet and it just made them feel the cosmos.
Yeah.
That could
They
be
do bring
really
up though
fun.
that ghosts and spirits in Chronicles of Darkness are considered two separate things. Ghosts, dead people. Spirits, reflections of the living, held back by a barrier known as the Gauntlet, which is that's dealing with werewolf.
Yeah, spirits are different.
Yeah, spirits are more concepts. They can be somewhat like people, but they're not usually. They're more like
They're concepts,
reflections.
they're emotional resonance concepts, reflections of the natural world, and things that humans have created. They're not
Like
human.
the grief,
That's
like for
ghosts.
example, you could easily make the grief clown a spirit, like a very disturbing spirit.
Oh yeah, the concept of a grief clown would be an absolutely terrifying spirit to face in the Umbra, or well, the Shadow. Same fucking thing. They just use different words for it. New world, old world.
I'm envisioning it
The
kind of being like Pennywise, but weirder.
Oh, definitely. In general, though, you get kind of this talk here about the classism and class struggle during this period of.
Because this is during the period of the International Workers of the World, wildcat strikes. This is like during the battle of the forget the name of the coal mining mountain, but basically
No,
it's not there.
Blair
Blair
Mountain was
Mountain's
later.
later. But basically, this is like when this was really coming into vogue.
But no, this is like Pullman era. This is,
Pullman
your
strikes, the
Chicago,
birth of
right?
socialist movements, like really strong ones.
So you could have essentially, yeah, you could have before a strike going to a medium as like an augur saying like, will we get our demands?
You could, or alternatively, here's another one. In the aftermath of the Pinkertons, like one of the no, in the aftermath of a strike, or during a strike, one of the leaders gets killed, and it's rumored that it could have been the Pinkertons set up by the company to do it. So you, as the medium, have to try to consult his ghost.
Hmm.
But the problem is, the company also hired the rival medium to try to contain the ghost so it never gets leaked out that what they shot the strike
They,
leader.
I like that.
You could do some fun shit with this type of like this is one of the
Yeah.
best. I think this is like conceptually one of the best settings. Writing wise, it's one of the not so well written ones because they try to throw in the world of darkness randomly.
Yeah. Though they do bring up then the spiritualism's internal conflict, which is that
There's
who's the
very
fake?
few.
Yeah, who's
Yeah,
the fake and who's the real?
yeah. There's very few actually real ones, and there's a lot of fakes. What's happening here?
Well, no, here's the disturbing thing. There's a lot of fakes now, but the number of those that actually at least have one successful communion with the dead is 1 in 3 now, rather than 1 in 10 like it used to be. What the heck's happening?
Yeah,
Was there a
what's
breaking
going on?
a thinning of the barrier?
Which, if you're playing werewolf at this time, would be absolutely terrifying.
Oh, and here's another one. Those who were part of Christian Science who basically lost their faith in God because they accidentally talked their to the dead. How did that
Yeah.
happen?
Then what if these apparitions manifest?
And on top
What
of
if they
that,
actually?
here's another interesting idea for a chronicle. Okay, hear me out. You're part of a Catholic parish, and an exorcist, like one of the rare exorcists, because Catholic Church does have trained exorcists for this, it says, I need to hire you guys on with me because this is way bigger than I thought. And you learn that more and more often the Catholic Church has had to actually train up and build up their exorcist wing because there's more ghosts. There's more real possessions. What the hell's going on? Like
So it
there's a
gets me to have a
lot of
great
cool
idea of
stuff.
a Hunter Chronicle steampunk Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters.
Honestly,
Oh, that sounds
down for that.
fantastic. Yeah.
Because you can put it in New York.
Oh, can I play the just off the boat, very strongly Italian speaking person
Yes.
who has folk who has a combination of spiritualist ideas, but also is like a priest who essentially slowly becomes an
Oh, no,
exorcist?
wait. That's a great chronicle. It's an all immigrant chronicle.
Hmm. Another one could be you're a poor Londoner who essentially decided to start their life as a psychic medium to pay the bills. That's another fun one.
Let's see. Next up is the Theosophical Society and its impact. Because they did have strong communication with everybody, but it was pretty much Blavinsky's or Blavatsky's
It was
baby.
Blavatsky's group, and it was really, it was what she said went.
But the problem was what happens when she goes away.
Right. And
And
there's
things break
also
apart.
the arguments that they have with one another over various issues.
Because apparently their headquarters, it's in Madras, India.
Yeah, look, Helena got around. Like, she traveled all over.
Again, Theosophy, one of the things is her belief in the Aryans, and one of the things she accidentally kind of got a little bit right, at least in Origins of Indo-Europeans, is they likely came from Asia.
Well,
Oh, is that actually where we get the word Aryan focusing on, like, India?
no, that
That's
actually
from
comes from the
Iran.
actual tribe.
Oh,
It comes from Iran, which means land of the Aryans. Basically, Iran, land of Aryans. That's where it kind of comes from. But she's the one that kind of first sees a little bit of that. She's wrong. She's right for the wrong reasons, I'm going to say.
yeah. And they're basically almost like sort of this upper class, high society, or at least that's what they want to put the appearance on.
Yeah,
But in reality, they're fractious and
They're fractious and completely fucking debauched. Let's be honest.
they're completely insane.
because, well, I mean, you're not going to find evidence of Thule
Right.
unless Chronicles of Darkness. You do
These
because you were taken because you were taken away from it once a child, then you came back.
here's another. Yeah, there's
The
that.
Theosophical Society is just a changeling.
That's nothing.
It's a
It's just a
There are
changeling
psyop.
group.
It's
some.
a changeling psyop.
There's another one that's really crazy too. The belief that the Kali Yuga and Ragnarok were the same thing. The
Oh no, we're
Hindu end
God
of the
learning.
world. Yeah.
We're crossing over with Glorantha. We're God learning now.
Yeah, it's
That's
a
Let's see.
dumpster
terrifying.
fire.
Yeah. They bring up the Society of Psychical Research, and their idea is that science is the way to discover more about the spiritual world.
Or to prove that there is a spiritual world, or if not, to explain
Yeah.
the unexplainable.
Which I get. I'm trying to wrap my head around, but it's just interesting that you're taking the tools and the techniques used to measure the material world and apply that to the spiritual world.
I mean, it makes sense. Keep in mind that a lot of scientists during this time period were at least partially funded by the church. A more civilian take has occurred in the 19th century, but a lot of your big
Like,
scientists
there's
still
still a
were.
lot of religious research universities
Charles
and things like
Darwin, for
that.
example, started life training to be a monk. Gregor
No, he
Mendel,
was a minister.
minister. Gregor Mendel, an actual monk.
Mind you, Mendel is a bit of an exception because, like, his other monks, is like the he was considered a little bit weird by his coworkers.
I mean, this is a dude who spent years charting pea plant growth and how they gained their pea plant qualities.
Yeah,
You have to kind
it
of be
was.
obsessive and weird to chart that.
Yeah. And the thing is, though, is that since they are trying to use scientific measurement, we have to remember this is the 1800s scientific measurement.
It's a lot less accurate.
Phrenology. They might use phrenology. They might use. There's no anesthesia, just cocaine. And hygiene, not even a thing.
This is the period where they would create the god helmet to try to get the spirits to interact with the human mind.
Let's say here they invented the daguerreotype photographic process.
Daguerreotype is one of the oldest variants
Yep.
of photography out there. It used to be very popular and common until better
Yeah.
versions were found. Still
They may
occasionally used, though.
yeah, they may have had listening devices that's supposed to hear the murmuring of spirits. To be fitted on a backpack which is connected to a headband worn by the bearer with two large cones that fit securely in the ears.
Oh
And
yeah,
there's
if you're
rumors.
wondering, this is similar to the audio tape recordings that they use nowadays.
Oh,
EVPs,
wait, was
yes,
that?
EVPs were very early on in ghost hunting and ghost discovery. There were attempts to do this. The electronic voice phenomena is basically brain gray noise. You're hearing words that aren't actually there because there's various sounds that sound similar to a language that you speak.
Also, another example of a reverend or priest, William Buckland, key to geological discoveries, but also a reverend.
Yeah.
And they give
Good catch,
another
squirrel
a
killer.
weapon that harnesses electricity based on Nikola Tesla that only affects spirits, but some say it's quite capable of injuring the living. And perhaps you don't want to cross the streams.
You know, I'm not going to
They've made a
say no to a
Ghostbusters
lightning
proton
gun.
pack.
No, they made
I'm
a
not going to say
lightning gun.
no. Yeah, I'm not going to say no to that. That's
I'm fine
cute.
with that.
I like a Nikola Tesla powered proton pack.
Yeah.
It's not a proton pack. It's an electron. It's an electron gun. It's a wireless transmission electrobolt gun.
Yes. And so now we get into the actual like supernaturals. I guess also
I'm
some of
just
the
now
characters.
envisioning. I'm just now envisioning Edison after killing the elephant with alternating current. He then has to deal with the ghost. It's like, fine, I'll electrocute the ghost elephant to death.
Time to send it to the graveyard in hell.
I'm just envisioning him trying to shock the ghost elephant.
It's an elephant gun made out of an actual elephant.
So there's a lot of psychics and fraud, supernatural. They mention
Yeah.
Mistress Agreska.
Middle class suburban woman, or no, that's where she lives. She lives in a middle class suburb of London. She's an old woman. She has a foreign accent despite living in London for years. Uh, she gets a lot of callers, usually after dark when no one notices. They'll have heard that the witch is wise in the ways of spirits and receives messages from the other side. The thing is, she's a fraud.
Annie
She was a
Broughton.
fraud.
Not in the way most
Yeah,
skeptics believe. She was a farm girl from Yorkshire. Oh, God. She's North English. She's from the
yeah.
North.
She's from the north.
She discovered on her 16th birthday that she could read people's minds and that people thought her in league with the devil for doing so. So she made her way to London to, make money as a con artist. She is a cold reader, uses her knowledge to build up a small fortune. With the assistance of cosmetics and an Eastern European accent, she has appeared as the unaging Mistress Agzinka for nearly 30 years. And
So
she's
she does
hoping
have
that the
psychic powers.
society pays for her visit. So she's not a fraud in her abilities. She's a fraud in the fact that she's probably a young woman.
No, she's not. She's very old.
Well, she was six. Yeah, she's in her 50s, but I guess the
No,
makeup
she's
is
not
making
in
her
her
look even
50s.
more
For
older.
over 30 years, she's actually either in her late 40s or in her 70s, depending. So
Yeah,
what she does is she uses makeup to hide that she's old.
yeah. The
Then there's
fraud is I'm
Clementina
actually only
Radanovic.
10 years younger.
Oh, hey, a Russian immigrant. These are fun.
Oh, not only Russian immigrant, Jewish.
Not surprising.
Yep. Uh,
Speaking of which,
so
here's a fun fact. Did you know? I did not mention this. I think in the previous cases. Did you know latkes are actually they used to be made from buckwheat,
oh,
and before that they were actually a type of cheese pancake. They used from what I
use
remember, it was ricotta cheese mixed with a type of flour that was then sweetened with honey because it was supposed basically latkes were originally made on an Italian thing called I forget the name of the it was an Italian thing and it was made in honor of this tale of Judith. That's why latkes and were basically from the tales of Judith, which were told quite a bit during the holidays during that period of time. Judith was very
ah.
popular among Jewish communities as a tale.
You see, I always thought it had something to do with Hanukkah, but no, it has to do with
No,
something
it's
entirely
because
different.
originally it was cheese and cheese and wine because that's what she dined on as she sawed the head off of the Assyrian general.
No, that's fitting them why it's with Hanukkah. It's another tale of Jewish military victory.
That's why they got linked together. And as for why potatoes were common, essentially, it was just very efficient. It was a very efficient crop, and when you combined it with onions, it made a very excellent fried sandwich, especially if you used
Mm,
not fried sandwich, made an effective fried dish, especially since schmaltz is very cheap to get
mm,
because it's rendered chicken fat.
fair. But this woman here, she fled the pogroms of Alexander III, and she was able to, I guess, communicate with the dead. Able to help out her community, and her gifts spread. Um, you know, her rabbi cites Moses Isserles and Chaim Vital in defense of her gift, basically, again, convincing her to help out the community.
I kind of like this.
Yeah, it's nice. Then you
Also, I like how
wait,
she
wait, wait, wait.
highlights. No, no, I like how she
Y-
highlights using rabbinical law that technically, since she does commit necromancy of a sort, that she is
yes,
not fitting for life.
she is disagreeing with the rabbi, and yeah, I mean that's kind of true.
I like that.
Then you have Winston Cole. A young black man of New York, he does 3 shows a week and a matinee on Sunday, which everyone can see that he has unlocked the darkest secrets of the mind. Uh, he starts out small, lifting coins and buttons on a table in front of him. He moves to bending spoons, and finally,
Spoon bendings was a very
yeah.
popular carnival trick, but at this time
Yep.
period.
Much of the show could be the work of a conjurer. The premise grows thinner and thinner as he makes larger and heavier objects move without any means of support. The scientist Thomas Hamilton theorizes that Winston is connected to the Odic force to create movement and suggests studying his abilities in an electrostatic environment to see if that would destabilize his gift.
Also, if you're
Fearing that
wondering, Winston thinks these. Wait, you're gonna put me to a fucking electric chair?
yeah, so he refuses. Winston's agent has work cut out for him. Their first venue kicked them out once the owner realized that he was putting a black man on stage.
This is
Weather
actually.
was fine, but the show received a note.
Yeah, from the KKK, which were they active in New York at that time?
Yeah,
They
they
were, but
were
not very.
nationwide at the time.
They were nationwide, but
Oh,
they were starting to dim in the 1880s. They were still
I thought
strong enough to cause trouble, though.
I thought the first one was just in the South,
It's
and it
mostly
wasn't
in the
until like
South.
the
It's
30s.
mostly in the South, but they had branches in major cities during this time
Yeah.
too.
Though no one's attacked him so far, but he knows it's only a matter of time if someone lashes out.
Also, this is actually a
Um,
nod to I forget the name of the movie. I don't remember if it came out during this time, but there was like a biopic which actually dealt with a talent guy who basically worked with a black man during the segregation period, Jim Crow era, where he was an entertainer and he got kicked out by a lot of venues because he was a black entertainer.
yeah,
Because that was
the
common. That
the
was very
yeah,
common during this time period.
yeah,
Basically, it was tough to have a gig if you were black because you either had to appeal
yeah.
to black only, which did not pay that well because they just didn't have the money, or you had to get lucky. And even then, venue owners could get threatened by the crowds. So they often would reject you just to avoid the problem because boycotting was popular during this time period.
The Theosophical Society, though, has said that basically his abilities are illusions because a black man does not have the Atlantean or Aryan heritage needed to manifest true paranormal powers.
Which was kind of the thought because, again, most people did not talk to black people about their own spiritual traditions because they had their own. They had their own based on areas. And this is, again, the period where they were reconnecting to their roots. So they had a very different culture at this point. They weren't talking.
At the same time, this would be an interesting one of the black man trying to make it in New York and using psychic powers to beat up the KKK.
You could do that. I think
Sort of a
that'd be
pulp
pretty fun.
chronicle. Yeah, like that could work. The other way to use this guy would easily be you could bring him into the modern era and drop that other aspect of it, of like the racial aspect of it, and more like this is someone who is performing what seems to be a fake stage show, but it's actually real.
And you
And
could have him be
And
and the note for his life is actually a shadowy organization or group is following him, and he's
they're
asking you to
trying
try to save
to,
him. And the big twist is
yeah.
it could be one of many things. One of the funniest is it's actually Vasquez trying to give him a job offer.
No, I'd actually go with the Chiron group looking to fucking dissect his brain.
That's the other one.
yeah,
That's the more menacing one.
or the Exarchs.
Yeah, it could be the
Right.
Seers.
Yeah. Then we have Lady Evelyn Hamilton. She's on the edge of the fashionable London set. She has rather forthright views about her fields of supernatural research. Her father ties with the Theosophical Society, the Society of Psychical Research, the
Oh, hey, and a
Freemasons.
Lovelace reference. So, for those
Yep.
wondering, Lovelace was quite talented with mathematics, but ultimately destroyed her career in the field to stay with her husband because the husband did not like being outshone like that, and she very much was a traditionalist type of gal. She is also credited, although not necessarily true, but she is credited with the popularized version of binary that we use in modern computer programming because she designed it to work off of Babbage's differential engine.
Yes. She's very important in terms of like this is the bare bones of how we make computer programs work. She is the one that did the pioneering research on that.
She did the pioneering logic research specifically because the concept was she was the one who figured out how logic circuits would work using statements, basically yes, no, differential, if, and. She was the one who did a lot of logic research for computing.
Yeah. So we've got this woman on the outside of society who wants to embrace, actual research within, I guess, the field of the paranormal.
Which, hey, think about it like this. Being a medium can give you that opening because it's a very
Yeah.
common woman's entertainment, and this could allow you a path in. It's the same reason why women became teachers so often. It was an avenue that they could get their own independence.
And then we have the Theosophical Society, along with dots for the society status.
Which I like. I do like that they referenced this.
And they bring
Uh,
up the Isis Unveiled, that the book, it's a blend of
it's
Hermeticism and Neoplatonism, and also drawing from the theory of Lemuria.
it's something that you're required to read if you wanted to join, because Blavatsky is that way. You also can go
Yeah.
further. You can see how Theosophy lies the ancient and modern worlds together and why the secret masters need it. Your specialty now includes an area of expertise, so you can literally use your hibity to help you on explaining reality.
Also explaining away that, yeah, the Asian Semitic people came from the Atlanteans, and the black people and primates came from the mindless Lemurians. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
certainly scientific.
I mean, she was correct that the lemurs came out of Africa, but that's about it.
She was correct about that and the vague idea that Indo-Europeans came from Asia, but she got the where wrong because she
Yeah,
thought they came from India.
the where is closer somewhere to modern day Ukraine. The Pontic steppes is generally what's assumed now.
Yeah, she thought they came from India.
Yeah. And they give us a little write-up on Blavatsky, on this guy Alfred Kazabon. I don't know if he was. Let me quickly look at the book to see if that was an actual book or not.
This is one of the things I kind of really hate about this splat is it's
Are we
fitting
talking about The Coming Race? The Coming Race is a real book.
No, Le
the person
Passenger.
Alfred
Oh,
Casaubon.
Casaubon. I thought you said the Kabbalah. The with that
Oh
like
no,
the
that's also a weird spelling of Kabbalah. Normally see it
yeah
with the K.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, this is one of the
no,
weaknesses of the splat.
This Alfred would
This
not have
guy's
been from
definitely
this era.
fake.
This
I
guy's a
kind of
fake.
figured. I just kind of hate
Probably,
that they do this.
yeah.
Like it's kind of
Yeah, they do the same thing with the Society of Psychical Research and pointing out that Arthur Conan Doyle was part of this group,
yeah, he was.
which then they Richard Hodgson.
By the way, if you're wondering, that's one of the reasons he actually made the Piltdown Man because he also really fucking hated the concept of evolution.
I need to check if this guy is real because he's basically the first guy pointing out frauds.
No, there's a ton of these guys that were in
Oh yeah,
there.
this guy's real.
Yes. Hodgson is one of the OGs. Like he is.
He held seances, later demonstrating to the sitters exactly how the pair had deceived them. It's fucking
Yes.
It's Penn and Teller.
Yes. He was very much like, I believe in this mumbo jumbo, but this mumbo jumbo is complete bullshit, and I will prove it.
Yeah, he was not necessarily unbiased. Another example they have is Emmeline Kingston, which I think is also a fake. Again, in a way, it's fitting they're doing this because remember, fraudsters and real guys are hard to determine, and it's
Yeah.
interesting to
Yeah.
see the
Still, it's
fakes with the
annoying.
reals.
It's
It's a
annoying for
bit annoying.
certain
It's
Yeah.
reasons.
obnoxious, and this is
Yeah,
why
this person is not a real one.
It's not like I don't understand why, and
it's
I
still annoying.
completely understand. It's annoying, but they've done this before.
Yeah. And again, I think making it so that you don't really know actually kind of fits with the era.
Although I think it's accidental. I think it was just a formatting issue.
It's
Yeah.
just a formatting thing. They put the real person first every time.
Okay, that's
Yes.
good.
Then we have putting back the veil, and this is now getting into the actual Chronicle of Darkness setting and mechanics.
They're
So
talking about how, like, okay, so spiritualism doesn't just apply to the gauntlet. There's a few other things that can have an impact on the hedge, for instance.
Because remember the fairy photos we mentioned a while back. The concept of believing in fairies came about, and that also kind of realigned them a bit.
And they give us actual mechanics for it. Characters from a given area that want to find a fairy path can do so on an intelligence plus occult roll. Normal humans who know the key to the gateway just need a wits and occult roll. Every time a human character takes a trod, do a resolve plus composure to avoid heading into the thorns. So
Which is an
actual mechanics
interesting
for
way.
for interacting with, the hedge, the shadow, which the shadow's at the werewolf.
Yes.
It is.
Shadow is the spirit realm in specific.
Yeah.
I'm
The
just envisioning
underworld.
some guy like arriving early to the pub. It's like, oh hey Dan, you're early. Yeah, I took the ferry route. Why the
The what?
hell would you do that? That was quicker.
And then the next
It was
one that they
quicker.
talk about is the underworld, which is in the world of darkness different from the Umbra, the spirit world. The underworld is specifically where human ghosts go, and whether or not ghosts are souls is a completely different debate. But ghosts are
It's
still
all
people,
yeah. It's also not the same thing as the one in Old World of Darkness.
Not at all.
right?
Basically, it used to be like this sunless sea, but then as more and more people died, as humanity kind of grew in scale and in age, land masses began forming until eventually
Yes.
it became its own little area. This is also where the spirits who want to come back come from when you
Hmm.
become a sin eater.
And they also and I do love the little section they have on how do the other splats work in this setting. So vampires can find their powers of mesmerism and mentalism, or what many people consider psychic at the time. So you could earn fame, especially because a lot of these times these events are going to take place at night.
Oh, since this is the 1880s, you know what you could have done too, just to add a little bit of fun. You could take from the old world of darkness, the OG world of darkness, the Stoker affair, and kind of throw that in too.
Ah, yeah.
You could. I think it'd be pretty funny.
Oh no, you put that in with also like investigation. It's like, okay, can we prove that these someone not like the human group actually takes what's in Stoker's works? Like, can we prove it right? And they accidentally prove that yes, this is correct. And they try to hunt down Stoker, who it turns out is not a vampire. He's a Strix.
Yeah, you don't need to
I
make it a
mean,
Strix.
I was about to say like that goes a little too far on
Like,
that one.
all right, let's see. The
An interesting
werewolves.
alternative, though, is okay. Hear me out. You're a bunch of vampires, and you're at a high society party, and you're just going mesmerist, and then it just kind of when the drugs come out and you take a bit of embrace, everyone's high, and then things go horribly wrong, and you think a spring-heeled Jack-like entity or Jack the Ripper went through the hole, when in reality, no, one of the party revelers was actually dead about a day ago. His body's being animated by something that just wanted to say hi to you. And now you, the vampire, have to get your buddies to get Spring-heeled Jack and try to banish him.
Hmm,
Spring-heeled Jack being the Strix possessing the corpse of an
yeah.
old society friend.
Let's see. So werewolves might go hunting. Uh, you know, the various spirits that are coming out.
Oh yeah, because the gauntlet's thinning, a lot more ghosts and spirits are oozing out. So this is kind of
Mm,
amazing for them, at least the ones who
yeah,
prefer hunting ghosts.
the pure, by contrast, want to do all they can to encourage spirits into the flesh, which gives me, in this case, a great idea of a guy pretending to be an exorcist, and in reality, he's ensuring that the spirit remains in the person's body.
Oh yeah, I could see that. That's an interesting antagonist.
Mages, obviously, they're connecting to the various mystery cults.
Quite a few
Prometheans,
mages would actually join the Theosophical Society.
yeah, let's see, Prometheans. So you have the fact that you obviously have the mobs that want to end their disquiet, as well as the scientific inquiry and trying to understand the divine fire. Because no doubt somebody's going to like, okay, you have this divine fire, so can we detect it, measure it? What's its
That has
heat?
happened, but what actually happens is there's a big surge in demiurges because this effort to experience and explore the new inspires and drives the creative force into them to such a degree they kind of recreate the mistakes of the forebears. A lot of Frankensteins got born this way. Same with things like Olgans. Olgans especially, since The only difference between a possession gone wrong and an Olgan is if the body gets up after the spirit's done with it.
And then
Agree, yeah.
And then the Sin Eaters. They actually really enjoyed this time because they can operate openly.
Yeah,
They claim to
they're
be
having a grand old time.
And more than one Sin Eater becomes famous as a skeptic, proving that ghosts do not exist by banishing the dead herself.
I love that one.
It's really clever,
Ghosts
that one.
aren't real, and then the ghost in their head saying, "Why are you doing this? So that we can corner the market, silly."
Look, we have supernatural powers to do this shit. I ain't standing for any of these fucking frauds out there.
Look, do you know how many times they get possessed and we have to deal? Oh, God, okay, hear me out. We do the Scooby Gang, Victorian era Scooby Gang as Sin Eaters, where you have the Velma character play the complete skeptic when she knows this shit's real. She died. She saw the underworld. She made a deal to come back. She knows. She
She made
just
a deal with.
is
She made a
tired of
deal with.
doing exorcisms on
I was gonna
mediums who
say
got possessed.
she made a deal with Scrappy.
I'm not referencing that diarrhea of a show. No, I'm just highlighting. You could do Victorian era Scooby. I'm just imagining Shaggy
I'm
as
just
this
not aware. I'm just not
Dickensian
aware if
urchin with his dog.
I'm just not aware if the ghosts are supposed to be antagonistic or not.
I'm just envisioning Shaggy with like this really thick Scouser accent, and he's like a fucking urchin, like a Dickensian urchin, with his reliable dog, who is his
Well,
ghost
no.
friend.
Then we have Fred disguising himself as a woman. After all, he's a fan of traps.
Well, no, his name is Frederick Jones the Third Esquire. He is the richest man in the town of Beaufort upon Tyne. Which isn't saying much, but he is a millionaire, an assured millionaire, because of the ascot factory he and his family owns. And he is the private funder of these expenditures and a respected member of the Theosophical Society. Until he gets about 5 pints of absinthe in, and then the drag shows begin.
In the mystery carriage.
Yeah, it's the mystery carriage.
And of course you have to understand the Velma's latest creation, the edible Scooby snack.
Which is actually just a mixture of I don't know how to explain, like a dehydrated it's a graham cracker laced with cocaine or it's a graham cracker laced with cocaine.
Oh, this fits so much. Then let's see, they give us some quote unquote modern spiritualists. Ethel Johnson, born 3 weeks after the Civil War ended. She was essentially a free citizen, but, well, she's in southern Louisiana.
Yeah.
She ends up having gruesome vision of a gruesome death before blacking out. When she woke up, she was next to the cut up body of one of the local town boys. She kept her secret until she met a man who was in the SPR who was investigating the murder. So we got.
Can see. Wait, this is That's So Raven, but like hate crime
Yes.
edition.
Yeah, I was about to say, like,
That's So Raven, killing racist crackers every night. That's
Yeah.
Speaking of,
She's
I
investigating.
don't
She's
hate the idea,
investigating strange phenomenon. Bring specimens back to the office.
I'm just envisioning one of the things she brings back is a skunk ape, and no one knows what the hell to do with it.
We have Francis Laurent, collection scientist obsessed with l'immortality and obsessed with spiritualism and potential for everlasting life.
Oh, this is gonna go horribly wrong. Oh, he's French Canadian too. Unfortunate.
Oh no. He read Frankenstein,
God.
and he didn't want to create life, just extend it to eternity. After stuttering corpses, he decided he needed fresher subjects to work on. And he found sickly people willing to die in exchange for money for their family.
Oh, this is based on the guy who measured the soul and a bit of
This is
Herbert
the
West,
soul measurement.
Reanimator.
Yeah.
I like this fusion. That's a good idea.
Let's see. His only problem was that no mediums he approached to work with would ever allow him entry into their home. He was refused time and time again. He finally pieced out the spirits didn't want any mediums to work with him. Yeah, that's why.
Yeah, that's why. Not that you're a fucking
Also,
creep.
Also, apparently when money was tight, he wouldn't ask, he just kidnapped people for their experiments.
Yeah, this is
His
Herbert.
findings were that illness inside an individual is fighting with that person's essence and losing the fight. If you could find a way to rejuvenate the essence of an individual, they could live forever.
This is a
That
mixture of Herbert West Reanimator, the Spanish doctor from Cool Air, and the guy who measured souls.
yeah. His
I like
youngest
it.
brother Julian said that he heard whispers right before he went to bed and right when he woke up. They told Julian that Francois was a horrible person and to stay away, but that couldn't be right.
This guy was a deviant maker before deviants. Not necessarily wrong, Private Penguin. Also, Squirrel
Oh
Killer.
yeah.
Finally, we get to the monsters in this Chronicles of Darkness book, and it's Quebecois in a rare twist.
They then have this section on the Grand Order of the Immaculate Three, which is when Reginald Wright, a local beer baron, held a séance by Richard DeVecchio. I think your character's
Del Vecchio.
uh,
Yep.
That's the next
DeVecchio,
one character being here, and that's
daughter
these
of
three people.
daughter of Italian immigrants. Um, he was told this brewery would be the foundation to the future, but he had to gather others to his banner, and they would support the three. 15 years later, the Grand Order hasn't spread across the nation, but has gained a foothold in several parts of the Northeast. Their goal is to connect with others who have heard about the Immaculate Three. They want to talk about how much they feel about spiritualism and attend seances provided by their members. It's a social organization.
This is actually not uncommon. A lot of private gentlemen's clubs and societies were like this.
Yes.
At the same time, though, it's mostly, I'm going to probably guess, an excuse to just drink beer.
Yes,
That
it
too.
is.
So the levels include the multitudes. You can attend meetings, but are not allowed to speak. You can have access to any medium who wishes to provide a seance for a monthly meeting. Hand of the Three. You cannot speak at meetings unless specifically addressed. You get allies 1. You can make it to the next level if they request it and are voted upwards. Then there's the Voice of the Three. You're allowed to speak and required to take part in all discussions about spiritualism in the state of the American Republic. Tiers of the Two. Currently, all highest-ranking members of the Grand Order of Immaculate Three are part of this rank. Members take on leadership roles, blah, blah, blah. And then Eyes of the One. If she finds something special in you, you can get to this level. When you're part of the Eyes of the One, you become the Harbinger of the Three. She is able to channel spirits through you. Oh, no. Okay, let's see what this one's about.
So let's see. So Rachel DeVacchio, um, let's see. When she grew up in Albany, was picked on, despised by people for being a hated Italian. When she was 7, after a beating in the park, she promised everyone that she would make them sorry for what they'd done to her. She never told her parents about what happened, even though her family asked. She pretended to be a medium in her 20s, pulled enough coin that she convinced other people that she was really talking with spirits, and used her reputation to make her tormentors' lives miserable. When people who had tormented Rachel came to her parlor for seances, she tried to ruin their lives. She told about secret affairs, disclosed things that she had uncovered through gossip. Years passed, she met a man with dark hair and green eyes who introduced himself as Miller. He told Rachel that he needed her to find someone for him. She tried to do a standard seance, but the man stopped her and said that he knew that she had the right thirst for vengeance, the kind of desire to return tenfold the harm that people had done to her. Um, and so she agreed to help to create the Order of the Immaculate Three. So it is a secret society
Yes.
with essentially
Yeah.
3 different agendas. 1, make beer and sell beer. 2, get revenge on the people that ruined her life. And 3, find this one person.
By the way, Private Penguin is...
Also,
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say this. Also, no one else can see Miller for some reason
He's a ghost. He's a
because
spirit.
he's a spirit.
He's either a ghost or spirit, one of the two.
But I was going to point out, Private Penguin points out that Mummy had some of the best Mortal Plus splats and lists a big batch of them. Like Immortals,
Yes, it
Blood
is.
Bathers, Body Thieves, the Eternals, the Reborn.
That is specifically from the book Immortals that was redone with Mummy Second Edition to update that for Second Edition.
Mm.
There are a lot of ways to be immortal in World of Darkness.
Yes. The Immortals book is one that we're going to have to take a look at some point. It is...
Oh, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
It is one of the better books written for the old World of Darkness because it gives a bunch of opportunities and a sort of semi-splat that's became... Like, there's some people that think that it was actually split off from Geist during development, and it was sort of what was intended for Geist. There's a lot of debate.
I don't think it was that. I think what happened was they were working on it and they couldn't fit it into Geist, so they branched it into its own thing. Because that can happen sometimes.
But in terms of I guess we're finished with the section. In terms of inspirations, they give a lot more just stories, ghost stories, stuff by like Edgar Allan Poe.
Tales of Mystery and Imagination. That's a good option.
They actually do recommend the Journal of the Society of Psychical Research.
Oh yeah, if you're gonna do this, you want to at least give a bit of a skim through that.
That's the UK version. There's the American version, which is the Journal of the American Society for Psychical
Also, yeah, the
Research.
Secret Doctrine. I'm not surprised.
You
Yes,
kind of
secret.
have to on
Yep.
that one. There is The Alienist, which is
Classic.
a mystery novel. Yep.
And then they give
Television and film. There is
the
Penny
Penny
really
Dreadful's
Dreadful.
a
nothing here
great
that's.
one. I like that one.
There's
The
nothing here besides that really stands out.
The Prestige isn't too bad.
The
as an option.
Prestige isn't too bad, but that's about it.
The other thing I would say is
Crimson Peak, I
honestly
would also suggest because that's a not
going
bad
on.
Del Toro film.
I guess doing research on your own, like of people who study this history. Actually, in preparation for this, I was looking up and found Esoterica had a episode on spiritualism and how it actually intersected with a lot of the social movements of the time.
Yeah, it's a very fascinating topic. There's a lot of crossover with society in general, and you can kind of look at things and movements like this to kind of know what sort of societies are worried about and how they feel about certain things and all this. It's a fascinating period, and it gave us some of the craziest ass books possible. Like I'm not even joking.
Yeah,
Almost
there's a lot
every
of amazing
modern
stuff, and also, yeah, almost every conspiracy theory has at least some basis in spiritualism.
Yes, almost every modern schizo
Like,
novel owes
yeah,
a great
like
deal of debt to these people.
like Vril,
Yeah,
which was a book
Concept of
from
Vril.
1871, talking about the superior subterranean master race and the energy form of Vril.
Also, the Orgon energy that's brought about by tantric rituals, usually sex, came from this time. Another one, the concept of Atlantis, was revived specifically because of the
yes.
concept of Lemuria as a potential sunken continent.
Yes, Atlantis basically owes a lot to a single guy in the U.S. who became obsessed with it, who happened to
A
be a
single
congressman.
goofy senator, yeah, single goofy senator, I think, who also
Nope,
believed in the.
congressman.
Oh, he was a congressman. He also believed in the Hollow Earth, so that was another one.
Yes, the Hollow Earth is also another big one. I've got a whole book on the Hollow Earth here. It's amazing. The
And then
discussions
you
that you
have the
get about
crazy
this
guy
is
who claimed he was Melchizedek. He changed his name to it, and he claimed to be like Thoth, who is the king of Atlantis.
yeah.
That evolved from that. The concept
There's a
of
ton of that.
oh man, the only thing that's kind of missing is the alien concept, but that's because it evolved kind of from the spirits and angels aspect that used to be a thing.
Though
Yeah, and
you could entirely have, instead of spirits, as a twist, you think it's spirits and then the saucer lands.
That would be a hilarious. Oh god, okay, hear me out. A low-level Delta Green campaign where you're investigating a haunting in a northern West Virginia, like that Pennsylvania Appalachian region, where it's like, I swear, there's spirits haunting this here community, and then the big shit post reveal is the saucer lands down. It was
You see, their
aliens
spirit.
all along.
Well, no, they're spirits because they could teleport through the walls, and they were in like invisible armor.
It was actually a Rigelian mind experiment to see the susceptibility of the human's mind towards electrostimulation. They basically put around the town a giant god helmet,
Oh,
and they were just collecting their data when the Delta Green guys came in.
and if you want to even go further, somehow they're the Theosophic Society for the aliens. They're not even doing actual science; they're just faking it.
No, they're trying to prove that ghosts are real by inducing them in humanity. Like we could bring back the dead with this electro generator. Oh, see, they see ghosts. This has to be something. And then no, it's
Oh, that.
not. It's mass
Oh,
schizophrenia.
oh, that would be fantastic. But yeah, this whole era is fascinating. But at the same time, it's like the period between like 1880s to like 1910. It's just really not utilized that much. I feel like in a lot of
it
fiction.
isn't. A lot of it's because the events that sort of sandwich it the end of the century is not as impactful to a degree as the start of the next one.
Yeah. But at
It's
the
a
same
shame because
time,
a
like
lot of
just
developments
so
occurred.
but at the same time, so much of our, I guess, modern culture, it comes from this.
Yes,
Like,
It does more than you think.
we have a lot to discuss when it comes to like the nature of these times, and to a greater or lesser extent the way it's depicted in even modern media is quite interesting.
A reminder that the first organized sports teams came about during this time period too.
Yep.
Specifically, baseball clubs unified into a series of larger ones. It hasn't developed purely into what we know as the MLB slash World League yet, but you have the National League at this point, as well as the American League forming out in the West. This is also during the time where early efforts at proto football, American football, gridiron came about.
as well as actual
And footy at this
football.
point was well played at this point because it was a very popular sport that you can kind of just do on the fly.
The rest of this makes angel in the outfield, but it's an actual angel, and you're trying to investigate it.
Oh, that's amazing! Oh, that actually sounds really fun. It's actually, oh god, I can see it too. It's like a minor, not necessarily minor league, but it's like one of the more bum fumpkin leagues, and their most promising outfielder is possibly getting pipped by the St. Louis Browns are interested in picking him.
Yep.
And oh god, that sounds really fun. There's you could also do a lot of weird Disney ideas like that darn cat, and it's like the ghost of a cat.
Yeah.
House on Haunted Hill. You could do the classic House on Haunted Hill, or the 13 Ghosts. Not the modern one, but the original one.
There's a lot of options, and I think that we can confidently rate this as good to great.
I would say middling good. The big weakness is I can't rate it high good, just because I feel like it blends reality with fantasy too often with their setting. But
I
other
mean,
than
that's the
that,
Yeah,
it's
nature of the
good.
World of
I
Darkness.
mean, I mean the thing is though is that you can kind of tell like when they're talking about somebody and I feel like they get too much into their background, too much into like their personality and daily life. That's where you can kind of tell, okay, this person's made up.
Or at the very least, some of their background stories have been changed up.
But then again, if I said, oh yeah, and this person happened to run as president with Frederick Douglass, or
Yeah,
or
it gets
or
weird.
or the link or this was the psychic of this was the spiritualist advisor to the Lincolns.
Who, by the way, in the Chronicles of Darkness did warn him of the theater, but he basically said fatalistically, if it happens, it happens. Lincoln didn't give a shit.
I fought vampires. I'm happy to die by a bullet than be turned into one of them.
Oh, no, it was more because, like, I think the idea was Lincoln was in one of his depressive moods, so he's just like, oh, if I die, it's okay.
Fuck it.
Yeah, all in all, pretty good. I recommend it. I will actually suggest, since I have linked it in the description of the stream, if you really like the idea of playing a mortal with benefits, try to find Second Sight. There was an effort to bring it to second edition, but I don't think Third Eye was finished. But Second Sight's
Third
pretty
Eye
darn good.
was released on the Storyteller's Compendium, if I'm remembering correctly.
Either way, it's still pretty darn good. Uh, the Chronicles of Darkness Dark Era series as a whole is pretty good. The companion is pretty solid. There's a couple of stinkers, like the Beast teaching a lesson one is a bit of a stinker.
And like the ones that we still have left in this, like
We
two
still
of them
have
are.
two left.
I think
We have.
we have three left. We have
And
Oh yeah,
most
we
of them
do.
are
We have.
Promethean.
No, we have.
yeah.
No, we have
One is
four
about
left.
one's about the
Because we got
30
the
Years
Foreboding
War.
Lands. We got the Foreboding Lands
No,
as
we did
well. We
that.
didn't do that. I thought we did. Did we do the Roanoke one?
No, we did not
Yo,
do
no.
Roanoke. 30 Years
No. Then
War,
yeah, we've got four
Roanoke.
left.
Yeah.
It was Roanoke. It's like one's on the 30 Years War, one's on the
30 Years
Year
War,
Without Summer we did not do.
yeah.
Black Death.
With which the Year Without a Summer, it does not involve vampires. It is entirely about Frankenstein.
Yeah, I guess they had a lot of stuff they wanted to do with Prometheans, but it didn't do well, so they just did this.
I mean, then again, it is Frankenstein. Like,
this was one of the stretch goals, if I remember correctly. They had like a couple of them that were core, which I think was Forsaken by Rome, the Black Death, and I think that the lifting the veil along with the Master's Tools were all the core idea,
Those
and then the
four are good, though.
Kickstarter. Yeah, and the Kickstarter basically gave everything else.
Hunger in the Black Land and 1001 Nightmares are Beast's Peak. You can't change my mind on that from Dark Eras 2. I'd have to look at that, Private Penguin.
We have to look at that. I'm not a big fan of Beast in terms of like Beast insists upon itself, as in it tries to shove itself into every other splat, which is a problem.
That's a problem. I think the biggest problem with Beast is I just genuinely think the core book is so poorly designed because they had a Kickstarter idea, they threw it away, kind of tried to repurpose a lot. It repeated how their layers work like 5 fucking times, man. Such a bad book in terms of design.
we do have evidence on this channel about that.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was a dumpster fire. But yeah, that's this is Lifting the Veil, Second Sight. Also, I was wrong. Third Eye is finished, so you can get a copy of it somewhere. As for what we're
But
gonna
then,
cover next week,
hmm, another trip to the dumpster.
okay? Let me crack open the dumpster. I have a lot of options. Okay, I'm gonna list a few and just see what the opinion is on everyone here. All right, let me open up my fucking dumpster. Are you interested in looking at Ben Dunn's Ninja High School?
No,
Mm,
but I guess we're doing it.
How about Moonpunk?
ooh,
Visigoths versus Molgoths, obviously that's one we're going to cover at some point, I know that.
yeah.
H.P.
Wait,
Lovecraft Prep Academy.
we're starting to get a high school theme. I realize.
Esoterrorists. Let's see, what else do I have in this trash fire?
Was Moonpunk a PBTA?
It was.
Well, we did ask
We
for.
could
We did
always we
ask it.
could always do Dogs in the Vineyard by Vincent Baker, the guy who did Apocalypse World. That sounds amazing.
Yeah. Well, we did summon PBTA, so I say this: find some PBTA stuff, and we'll put it at a poll.
Moonpunk it is.
We're going to the moon.
Or I have a couple of others like Comrades. I also have I have a couple of really terrible Powered by the Apocalypse. I will probably put it to a poll. But my personal vote is for Moonpunks.
But we'll figure that out by next week.
And I'll
Have a good night,
actually make
everyone.
sure to write a poll on the Discord, which I also have linked. I will also put one in. Actually, nah, I'll put it in the community. You'll see it in the community tabs on the channel. Have a good night, everyone.